time, we will begin with our public announcements by Mayor Mendez and Commissioner Galansky.
Is there anything that we're talking about in particular? Is this just self-led?
Yes.
Okay.
Coronavirus.
Commissioner Galansky wanted for us to have a conversation about the coronavirus, and this was in a way pretty forward-thinking because she asked for this last week. And I appreciate that, Commissioner, and I appreciate for both you and Commissioner Neese requesting this. And this morning, I'll let Commissioner Galansky speak after this, but this morning, as you all know, I did, under the authorities that I have, declare an emergency based on the situation we've been confronted with. I did meet with the city emergency management team yesterday, as well as earlier today, so that we could really try and come up with the best possible solution for what it is that we're dealing with. And I stated earlier, and I'm going to state it again, we have not had a confirmed case yet. However, I don't want for our emergency management team or anybody out there to be acting as if we're going to be immune from this. I think the most prudent course of action is for us to be responding and planning as if we're right in the middle of this pandemic, which other parts of the country are. So I believe it's prudent for us to be operating as though we have cases, because I think it's also naive for us to think that we don't have people walking around with the virus, or naive to think that people have not been exposed to it here in our city. So based on that, and based on the meetings with the team, what other cities across the country are doing, we did come up with some guidelines and recommendations, as well as some orders as to what to do going forward. I know that there's some things on there that are going to affect members of our community, both personally and economically. It's a very difficult thing in this position to try and play favorites. We have to try and be consistent across the board with public safety in mind, first and foremost, the best interests of the elderly and immunocompromised citizens that we have in our city, and do what's best for the public health and safety of our city to try and prevent the spread of this. I know that it's been the most difficult decision I've had to make so far as a mayor, as far as what actions to take and what steps to take. And I just hope that the community trusts in our leadership and the fact that we are keeping, first and foremost, the prevention of this illness at the top of our list. Thank you. Commissioner Galansky.
So I'll say mine just briefly in Spanish. It was unexpected. But espero que todos tengan en cuenta y que estén seguros de que estamos tomando todo esto en serio. Nomás porque ahora se hizo la declaración no quiere decir que hubo un gran cambio en la situación. Hasta ahorita no se ha confirmado ningún caso. Y entonces lo que estamos haciendo es para prevenir el que haga un pánico entre la gente, que no se pueda, como ahora que están yendo a los tendajos y que muchas de las cosas que uno busca no se encuentran. Queremos que la gente sea precavida, que sean considerados, tomen respeto con sus vecinos, la gente mayor de edad, porque de esa manera es como vamos a poder reducir el efecto de esta enfermedad. Entonces, por favor, tengan fe en nosotros, estamos haciendo todo lo posible, pongan atención a las noticias que les damos, y si tienen alguna pregunta, comuníquense con alguien de la ciudad. Les estamos dando la información tan pronto que la sabemos. No queremos alarmar a la gente, queremos nomás hacerlo responsable. Y entonces cuando se altere más la situación, nosotros les vamos a avisar. Pero por mientras, por favor, cada quien sea responsable por sus propias acciones y tenga consideración con los vecinos, con sus familiares. Yo, por ejemplo, vivo con mis papás que son ya mayor de edad. Aunque sea joven, tengo que tomar en cuenta que a lo mejor a mí no me van a tomar los síntomas, no me van a afectar los síntomas, pero a ellos sí. Entonces, espero que todos tengan esa cortesía. Y bueno, es todo.
Thank you, Commissioner. Very well said. Anybody else want to speak?
I do.
Doctor?
I would remind everyone that we've unfortunately suspended the public events during the challenge and the ciclovia coming up in May, and those are for really good public health reasons. But I would also remind you that one of the best ways to strengthen your immune system, in fact, one of the only ways to strengthen your immune system, is to make healthy choices in your life. Don't smoke, don't overdrink, do exercise regularly, and do make healthy food choices. To that end, the Brownsville Farmers Market is another one of the institutions that will not be meeting for reasons of gathering, but the mobile market will be set up. It was set up today, and it's set up again on Thursday at the Quonset hut near the Scale House, where you can buy freshly picked vegetables at a very, very reasonable price to serve to your family. So make those healthy choices, even though we're not meeting to celebrate health and wellness and good choices. That is the only protection that you have in order to strengthen your immune system. It will be open from, I believe it's 9 to 12, and it sold out today, and it will be back on Thursday.
Commissioner.
I just wanted to reach out a little bit. I agree with everything everyone said, but I'm also the chairman at the Ozanam Center, and we rely on volunteers out there. And we were advised by ARP, because of their vulnerability, that they wouldn't be able to assist us. We used to get about 5 to 6 people a day. And also, I guess Cameron County has suspended sending community service people. So if there's anyone out here that can help out volunteering at the Ozanam Center, we would like to have you participate. I'm just trying to find the number, but we'll get it out there. It's the Ozanam Homeless Center, and we would need your help if possible.
Thank you.
And I would just like to echo the sentiment of all of the commissioners, but as well tell you that we have seen what has happened in Wuhan, China. We have seen what is currently happening in Italy. We have seen what is going on in Spain and all of these other countries, the UK. Nobody is immune to what's going on. And Brownsville, we're a family. And keeping this virus out of our community is only as strong as our defenses. And if you feel sick, make sure you phone ahead to your doctor and let them know you're coming in. As well, phone ahead to the hospital, let them know you're going in so you're not sitting in a waiting room next to somebody who might have a lower immune system or be there for dialysis or some other issue that we're not aware of. I would just ask, with everything I have, please, please, please fight this defensively, and let's keep this out of our city for as long as we can, because we know that a lot of our population is elderly, and even more of our population suffers from diabetes and things like this. And it would be devastating for it to come here to the city. And so I ask you, with everything I have, with everything we can do, please, 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 let's keep this out of our city. Let's wash our hands. Let's use hand sanitizer. Let's protect our elderly and those who have failing immune systems, and everybody from being in the path of this, because there's no way around it. It is devastating. And we do not want that in our community, and we want to fight it for as long as we can. And I would just add, please follow the World Health Organization and all CDC recommendations daily, because one of the things we met this morning at Valley Regional with Valley Baptist, it was a huge coalition. Commissioner Neese and Commissioner Cowan, myself, sat down with these officials, and we asked them, what can we be doing as a community? What do you want us to do more so that we can, really fight this? And there are so many recommendations, but it's so hard for us because every day the information changes. This virus is novel. Nobody has immune system to it. Nobody has defenses to it. So it is going to be the fight of our lives. But the first step, the first piece of the puzzle is having the public not panic. Don't go to the store and hoard food. You don't need for the next 2 or 3 months. I promise you, HEB is not closing. Our farmers market is here to provide for us. There are so many outlets. Let's make sure that we do everything we can to help the elderly in our community. Let's make sure that we do everything within our power to be kind to one another, because we're only going to get through this together. If we start doing things like this, we're not going to get through it together. So I just ask for your kindness, I ask for your patience, and I ask for you to be vigilant. And I ask for you to be ready to fight to keep this out of our city.
Mayor, I have that number now. So call for volunteers to the Ozanam Homeless Center. It's 956-831-6331. Thank you, Helen.
831-6331. Thanks.
831-6331.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, during our meeting this morning with Valley Baptist and Valley Regional, one of the things that we're pushing on is a coordinated response to how to test for this and trying to set up drive-through testing in our city somewhere. So I think that's a priority for me, and I think for our leadership, and we'll be providing updates as we make progress.
Thank you. Thanks.
Next, we have the 2020 census.
Same. Most of you have gotten the census materials here in the mail over the last several days. If you haven't, I'm sure you will. Please keep in mind the importance of this. This is something that's only going to come along, once every 10 years. You have to make sure that you count, make sure everybody counts, continue to spread the word. Please fill these out. If you need any assistance, reach out to us. But spread the word in the community, because this is our only chance at this for a long time. And the resources that we're able to bring into our community as a result of this are crucial for operations from city standpoint, county standpoint, local, state governments. So it is crucial for you to respond and encourage everybody else in your household to respond as well. Thank you. Commissioner Galansky.
And I attended a meeting for the Brownsville Complete Count Committee. On Friday, they had already tried out the census questionnaire because it came out on Thursday. You can self-report right now if you don't have your ID number. If you haven't already gotten it in the mail, you can probably call. But one of the things that's tripping people up is there's the question about your race. And so us as predominantly Hispanic, most of us might think that Hispanic is our race, but they're not considering it as the first option. So what they're suggesting that you do is you answer white, and then that bounces you to the next question, which then you can do Hispanic. And I think there might be some discrepancy that you can choose between Hispanic and Mexican American. You need to answer those questions, though, in order to be able to move forward. The other issue that they discovered was that there is no correction screen, so that you can go back and make sure that you spelled your name right. So be very careful when you type in your name, the names of the people in your household. Make sure that before you hit enter or you move on to the next question that the spelling is correct. Those are little glitches that they found on the first day. With the more time that passes by, they're going to try to correct that. But in case you encounter that, please feel free to call the toll-free number and make that correction so that the record is correctly reflected. So.
Thank you. All right.
Next, we have presentations. The Lone Star Legacy Designation Award for Dean Porter Park.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Commission. I have with me Graciela Salazar, my Assistant Director. I'm going to move the board over. This is a brief presentation. We just wanted to showcase this wonderful designation for our park, and in light of some, I wouldn't say concerning times, but maybe this can lift a few spirits and kind of remind people one of the wonderful things about our city and all the people that came before us. And so, oops, that went a little quick. So Dean Porter was able to receive a Lone Star Legacy Park designation, and I am proud to say that it is the first designation in the Rio Grande Valley. And we were the first one to be the first border city, but last year El Paso got it. And so we were really, really close to getting that. And so a Lone Star Legacy Park is a park that holds a special prominence in the local community and the state of Texas. These parks have endured the test of time and have become iconic to those who have visited, played, and rested on their grounds. A designation as a Lone Star Legacy Park is one of the highest honors that can be bestowed upon a park. And then the criteria is that it must be at least 50 years old, designated as a public park, and meet at least one of the following: that the property represents distinctive design and/or construction. The park is associated with historic events or sites. The park is associated with events specific to local community or state, and it is home to unique natural features, which this park satisfies most of those. We will also be getting a marketing material for this, and rec cards, website, PSA, so we'll be showcasing that as well as just kind of benefit of that. Here's a map. As you can see, the little circles with the little stars on them kind of showcase where they are. We will soon be on this map, and we will be below Corpus, and I think that was El Paso, and I don't know that star in the middle, on the left. So just to do a brief timeline, so for those who remember, and this is why when we talk about naming rights too, many refer it to Dean Porter Park still as Ringgold Park because they know it, that's their history. And so this is a picture of Ringgold Park, now known as Dean Porter Park, in 1938. A brief timeline, in June 16th, 1927, the parcel was purchased. It was about 8 city squares. It was formerly a landfill, and then in 1929, the city began to incorporate Ringgold Park into the Brownsville Park system. And even way back then, the Rotary Club installed a $2,500 swimming pool, playground equipment, benches, flower beds, and lawns. In 1933, there was the first Easter egg hunt. There was a work in July 18th, 1933, to working on the Resacas, and that was using the RCF labor force through the National Youth Administration, and that was led by then City Manager Robert Runyon. And then it was really great to go through the history of this park, to see all the effort that our predecessors have put forth and honoring and knowing what a gem that our park system would be. And so this is the first structure that was in Ringgold Park or Dean Porter Park was the Jacal. And then here's a picture of the youth administration boys doing their cleanups. And then there's way back when South Hot, Texas, a wading pool was ever so important. And while this picture features Fillmore Park in 1941 with a barbecue pit, that's a barbecue pit, and the caption says, "Ringgold Park's wading pool was a popular spot with the youngsters here Sunday afternoon. Many kids spent the afternoon at the park, and practically all of them got around to the pool before long." And shown below was a new barbecue pit recently completed at the park. And one of them was just talking about how amazing this new amenity was. So just one of the articles I found. And then this just showcases in 1948 the New Wave Ocean Merry-Go-Round, and lists all the little girls and boys listed on there. And then really interesting as well was the efforts for, even way back then, the importance of trees in our city. And this picture on the left was very interesting. There was a rubber shortage during the war, and so they were trying to, I will not pronounce the tree name because Roy will shake his head at me if I ever try to say it. So, but they were trying to figure out if there was trees in Dean Porter Park that could help to satisfy the rubber shortage. So it was a very interesting history. Eventually to a popular slide that many are familiar with, and then the master planning process. Camille came in the 1965. In 1998, Roy F. Mitty, born in Brownsville, was the founder and chairman of the board of the Financial Industries Corporation and president of the Mitty Foundation. They gave back to their beloved town, and that's when part of our Dean Porter Park Restoration, Inc. came through, and that's when part of the name-changing process was happening. And so there's been a lot of love and dedication to this park over the years. It is my honor and privilege to continue to maintain it for our community members. And then so our call out always is if you have historic photos, you want to have that commemorated in our park's history, we'll be applying for Washington Park next year, and then probably Fillmore Park after that, which is, if you didn't know, that is Garfield Park's original name. And we're just so glad for the investment from local community members. And so I want to give a special thanks to our mayor and city commission, our Parks Advisory Board, all those who gave letters of support for this park, to the Texas Recreation and Parks Society, who have bestowed this designation to many important parks in our state, our Historic Association, and Dr. Tony Knopp, who helped me review this. Of course, the Mitty family and the Mitty Cultural District, Dean Porter Park, Inc., and of course, Melanie Connor. We could not have done this without her, and all those who are dedicated to this park. And of course, our residents and visitors for over the years, ensuring its relevance and importance to the community and becoming such an iconic and beloved place. That's it.
Thank you. That's great.
So you showed a picture of the famous slide. I still have, and this is a true story, I have like a 1-inch scar on my leg from that slide.
The rocket one?
Yes, me and a whole lot of other people in this town have that.
It was really hard to find photos, so if any of you really do have those in your beloved collection, and you want to share those with us, then we would greatly appreciate it, and we try to put some online archives. So yeah, that was hard to establish the provenance for that.
I won't submit a picture of the scar.
No, that's okay. Don't worry. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we had the Public Works landfill employee recognition, which we're going, yes, we're going to move it to the next city commission meeting.
Okay,
So
very
we'll
good.
move on to the next agenda item, which is the public comment period.
Is there anybody here?
No one signed up for the public comment, and
No?
we don't have any calls.
Okay, very good.
So we'll
Hi.
move on to the next agenda item. The next agenda item is a work session, engineering public works pillar update.
Well, good evening, Mayor, and good evening, Commissioners. First of all, I want to say that it broke my heart not to be able to present the landfill crew. They've done a fantastic job, and I'm so proud of them. But in light of what's happening, we postponed that item to a further meeting. So we're going to proceed with the 90-day report from Public Works. And I want to start off by, again, thanking the staff. I've been here over 4 months, and I've begun to learn and meet the staff, and they're a fantastic group of people. And what I'm going to be talking about, the achievements that we have accomplished and et cetera, could not have been possible without their dedication and effort. I really owe it to them, and this is really more of the report. They're an excellent group, and I call them excelente. To define the new Department of Engineering and Public Works, I think best if we look at the mission statement. This mission statement was adopted and approved or voted on by the staff themselves. The mission is to build and maintain the network of streets, trails, traffic control systems, storm drainage facilities, and solid waste disposal facility in a manner that protects the environment, promotes goodwill, prosperity, and pride to the people of Brownsville. And how do we do this? Starts off by having a good structure and the right people in place to do the work. Engineering and Public Works is comprised of over 200 employees, about 203 to be exact. It's currently grouped into 4 divisions and organized into 15 separate divisions. The first group on the right is the engineering group. The second group is what I call the environmental group, then the drainage and patching, and the last will be in the streets and right-of-ways. If we zoom in into the engineering group, prior to May 2018, there were actually 2 separate departments, the traffic department and the engineering department, and they were grouped together as one department of engineering and placed under the city engineer. Then in June of 2019, that department was grouped with the Public Works, and that's how the new Department of Engineering and Public Works came to be. Then, of course, after that, I was hired and came on board. I wanted to mention the last bullet point there, the integration of the work. Even though the departments were joined together, it really needed some work, and the achievement that was done in getting them to work together has really opened up a lot of possibilities. That's what has enabled the work to flow, information flow from division to division. We have filled all the gaps. It's enabled to do some of the street work that we've done. And you can see all the improvements they've done. It's all because they came together and they enjoyed their attitude, and they realize the benefit of working together as a group. And they're very eager to do more work. The engineering division includes the in-house design group. There's where they do some in-house street construction work, drainage facilities, bike and hike trails, traffic infrastructure, and we also do the construction administration or contract administration. We have the construction inspection group. They actually inspect the street work. We do some building inspection when it's in-house work. For example, the Stegman building, which is the performing arts building. We do some roofing of some of the city buildings. And of course, we work side by side with the planning department to do subdivision planning reviews. We do right-of-way acquisition, floodplain management. We work with the Grants Division to minister the CDBG projects and street projects. We do the budget estimating and et cetera. We're putting together the CIP program for the streets and of course drainage. That's a very important item that we have. Then we have the other half of the engineering department, which is the traffic division. The traffic is in charge of pavement markings. We got over 660 miles of streets, and we do the striping and sidewalks, the bicycle trail markings, and et cetera. We have the traffic graphics. We maintain over 27,000 street signs, and we manufacture and install those signs in-house. We got the traffic signals. We maintain 211 signals throughout the city. And of course, there's improvements in that division. We're looking at automating and synchronization to improve the traffic flow. Then we go to the second group, which I label as the environmental division. Then we have the landfill, which I'm going to elaborate a little bit. The landfill is a state permitted facility and has to comply with the state permit requirements. And then we have the environmental group, which administers the city's MS4 permit. And that's very critical, which I'll elaborate here in a minute. And then we have the hotshot group. Again, let's go into that. The landfill division, the city owns and operates its own landfill. We have a type 1 landfill, which allows us to accept, in addition to the residential waste, material, medical, and fiber asbestos. We also accept construction, demolition, debris, brush, and we are a registered facility to accept tires and process tires. So even though it is a city-owned landfill, we operate like a regional landfill. We accept waste from the surrounding communities, and we work with the Lower Rio Grande Valley Development Council when we do tire collections. And we're the only registered facility within 40 miles. So a lot of the tires in this part of the valley come to our facility. Our landfill was permitted in 1979. It was amended in 2001 to increase to 190 feet MLS, which is the mean sea level. In reality, what it means, that currently our landfill is about 80 feet high. It's going to go another 100 feet high. That's something to keep in mind. We just opened the last cell, number 4, which will give us about 20 years of life. After that, we're going to have to start going aerial. When we do aerial, it might change our operations. The winds are very high around this area, and maintaining and collecting or keeping the paper from flying away is going to become very critical at that height. So, just because we got 52 years of life left doesn't mean that we can relax and lay back. We need to start planning for the future. We collect about 350,000 tons of debris per day. Now, what I wanted to mention and what we postpone right now is that the landfill, being a state facility, is inspected every year by the state. And for the last 16 years, the facility has not had any violations, has passed inspection on the first time around. And that is quite an achievement and that's what I wanted to recognize. Also, last night there was an article on Channel 5 News about composting. I don't know if you all saw it, but it just elaborates on things that we do at the landfill. It's a joint partnership with the PUB, where we're using their sludge and our brush mulch to compost and make a compost material that we can use as daily cover. So that will save us on materials on daily cover at the landfill, plus save space. So there's a lot of benefits to that. So
Is that the one that can be used for landfill then?
yes. Of course, if there's if that pilot project proves beneficial and we go full scale, we might even have some extra material that we could use in other areas like parks and et cetera, or even some of the citizens could use some of that.
Are we able to ask a question? I have a question about the 52 years of life remaining. What happens after that?
That's why we need to start looking at it.
So is there a way to attach a value, a monetary value to if we were to institute a comprehensive recycling program that extended the life of the landfill for X number of years? Is there a way to decide or to figure out what the return on investment for that would be?
Yes, and the landfill has got a volume. And so we look at that volume and we allocate the expense on that volume. And that volume right now is finite. You know, we know the size is 275 acres and we know the height. So, and we're currently collecting 350 tons of waste. So when you take one, divide by the other, you know what is the price of a cubic yard of volume space. So, you know, it is very expensive. Not only are we looking at the operational costs right now, but we got to look at the post-closure costs. You know, we got to maintain the landfill for X number of years, and that could be perpetual. So there's a big expense tied into the landfill. So anything that we can pull out of the landfill, like recycling, you know, if this mulch proves beneficial, this compost proves beneficial, that reduces our daily carbon needs. Any materials that we recycle out of there, like right now we're pulling all the metals and getting them out of the landfill. If we could do the same thing with other materials, other valuables, for example, brush. Brush we mulch, we grind it up and put it back in the landfill. We could find a source for that, like composting. We could use a daily cover, but you know, the more we pull out of the landfill, it increases the life of the landfill. So there's a lot of things we need to look at and we need to explore. The second group is the environmental and MS4 compliance. The S4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. What it means is that in some communities, the stormwater is actually commingled with the sanitary sewer, and all that water goes to the treatment plant, and that's how it's treated before it is released out. When we have a separate storm sewer system like the MS4, means that we don't commingle our water. We take our water, storm water, directly out and dispose it into the river. To do that, we have to comply, excuse me, we have to comply with the EPA Clean Water Act. And we have a permit through the state of Texas to do so. But, you know, there's conditions tied into that permit. We have to monitor that we don't get contaminants into the storm water. That's where you see all these silk fencing that we put around construction sites and et cetera, is to keep the silk from getting into the storm sewer. Silk, those fine particles of clay and silk get into water and they float. They take a long time for them to settle. It makes the water cloudy, and cloudy water doesn't allow sunlight to go through the water, and so it affects the marine life in the water. And you know, our marine life here in the valley is very critical. So we have to monitor that. We also have to monitor other facilities, safe, like for example, mechanic shops. We have to make sure that the oils and greases that are collected and have a collector that actually comes around and not have that material go into the storm sewer system. Sometimes I've seen cases where people may change the oil in their vehicles at home and they take the bucket of oil and go dump it down the drain. It happens quite often, and that's highly illegal. We need to prevent that. Other facilities like pesticide, other chemicals, they need to have measures to prevent any spills from getting out of their property into the storm sewer. So those are the conditions of the permit. So as long as we enforce those conditions, we can continue to dispose our stormwater straight into the sewer system. That particular division also maintains the pumps, and I'm talking about storm pumps like the Impala pumps and a lot of storm drainage pumps. We maintain the recycle right-of-ways, and we do a lot of inlets and manholes cleaning. The third group is the hotshot division. They do street sweeping, drain dish mowing, curb cleaning, scraping. That's where we have our night crew that actually maintains and sweeps our downtown area. And we have brush trucks to help the other divisions as they're working to pick up their leader behind them, especially when they're doing sweeping or trimming trees and et cetera. And then our tree spade, which is the relocating of trees for the Forestry Division. The third group is the patching and drainage group. That comprises of the street and drainage, the concrete and patching group. The drainage division maintains alleys, ditch maintenance. They do some sinkhole repairs, bridge repairs, other spots on the road. They do storm sewer installation, and of course, like the other divisions, they also respond to inclement weather and any types of emergencies. When we need them, we put them on call. The hike and bike is another sideline work that they do. They work very closely with the Parks and Recreation Department in maintaining the hike and bike trails. And if you notice there, they're paving that's the trail on over there by behind the event center. They work very closely with the multimodal department in designing and submittal of new projects for the highway department. The concrete division does all the concrete repair, like curb and gutters, storm inlets, sidewalks. They work again with the Parks and Rec to repair any skate parks, basketball courts. They do repairs of drainage pipes when they become disconnected, valley gutters, parking lots, and just any work that involves concrete. Here in those pictures, you see they're doing some work in the 14th Street Market when they were doing some improvements there. The patching division is the division that does the utility cut repairs for PUB. We also do street pothole repairs and other asphalt repairs in alleys and other areas as needed. Then the third group is actually the last group is the street and right-of-ways division. That division has the city forester, the street maintenance, and the greens division. The Forestry Division is really a one-man group, and that's Mr. Roy Reyes. And there's a picture there was a cypress tree that was donated by PUB that's being planted. Last year, I believe in December, I had just come on board. The city was celebrating 20 years of being designated as a Tree City USA. Well, we just received notice that we have been designated as Tree City USA for the 21st year in a row. And,
Wait, can you say that again? Sorry.
the city of Brownsville has been designated as Tree City USA for the 21st year in a row.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
There's some pictures of the nursery. We have two nurseries, one for the big trees, which is over there by Duckberry Street, and then we have another nursery there at the yard for small plants. That's behind the Dirt Public Works. The Street Maintenance Division is that group that does street work. And what I'm listing right here, and currently we're not doing any major reconstruction work, the full-blown street work. We're doing a lot of mill and overlay, which means we remove the asphalt and blade the base to make sure it's smooth and then put in a new street surface. That group, in the last 3.5 months, have done all these streets.
So this is the one that I had an issue with. Not a single street there is from District 2.
Right.
Yeah,
and-
there is.
Well-
On California Street, that's yours.
That's District 1.
Yeah,
No,
but let me
that's too
explain
far.
why that happened. One of the things that I noticed when I came on board is that, and this affected the street maintenance division as well as the pothole and other divisions. They jump around quite a bit. They get called for a complaint someplace and they run out there, do the work. Then they get called for another complaint and run and do another work. While they're trying to respond and be responsive, which is good in their mind, it's not very efficient, especially when you got heavy equipment you're trying to move around. So what I did, and it just happened, it was not by selection, it just happened that they were working in one of those areas. I thought, don't jump around. Do all the streets in the general, the little cluster. It's not that we're doing all the streets in that district, but in that cluster.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just don't think that's fair to the people that live in the other areas.
Well, so they've done that cluster, and because we're working as in tandem, like an assembly line, the concrete crew is working here on Adams and some of the streets. So we already moved our paving crew. We started to mill and overlay some of the streets right here on First and Second and Madison and this area here. And I think that's District 3.
That's 4. Should be 4,
or
probably.
4. No, it might be 3.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. But anyways, And we're not going to do all that district, we're just doing the little cluster, and then we're moving to District 2, I believe that's your district. So that's in the radar. We should be there, I want to say maybe 2 months.
If
maybe
you
3
could
months.
send me a list of all of the streets that you have planned for District 2, because
Oh, it's coming up.
it's probably been like, what, 2 years since I've
Yeah.
seen any type of.
No,
list.
it's coming up. Like I said, we've done a lot of improvements and a lot of planning, and that's one of the benefits of having the department as it is now, that we're, all the divisions work together. Engineering is part of our division. It just has helped us plan, and the information has flowed through. And I'll show you that in the next slide. Those are the streets that have been completed, and some of them by the in-house and some of them by private contractors. Those are the streets that are in the mill coming up.
And could you go ahead and send that to each respective commissioner
I
of the
can
district,
I
please?
can do that, yes. Yeah, you see the first group is District 1, second group is District 2, third group is District 3, and District 4. Now, in-house, our small crew is doing some mill and overlays, but we also have contractors that are doing other work, plus, of course, we get the CIP. Those are the big projects where we actually are doing a full-blown reconstruction from base up. But that's the list of streets that are planned, and I feel very comfortable that, the new attitude and the people that are working, they're very excited. It's going to get done this year.
Do we have a breakdown of money allocation for those areas?
Yes. Yeah.
I just see it very extremely lopsided.
If I can move forward?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. Then we have the Greens Division. The Greens Division does a lot of the cleanup. They collaborate very closely with our departments like the health and parks, planning to address concerns. They participate in multiple citywide neighborhood cleanup events, and they're responsible for trimming the trees along the highway. That's in agreement with the TxDOT. They also work with I think it's called the Brownsville Beautification Committee. So they do a lot of, maintain a lot of those parks. For example, you see the Billy Mitchell Triangle that's going into the airport, the 14th Street Plaza, the Cole Park, and Market Square. I guess we had an event at Market Square. So what have we done in the last, in this report, in the last 90 days or maybe 120 days, you want to go extend that out? We've done a lot of work, getting the department to work together has been the key, and I'm very proud of that, because that has been the key to a lot of the success that we accomplished. I need to continue that movement by providing training, and we are sending and getting training to the employees as best as we can. We may have hit a little obstacle right now, a little roadblock, but we're not going to stop there. We are working in our storm sewer improvements. We got several projects coming up. One of them to install some sensors in the suckers to measure. Not only does it measure the water level, but it measures water flow and bidirectional, whether it's coming or going. Because here in Brownsville, we're so low that sometimes we get negative flow. Water comes back into us from the river when the river's higher. So we have to measure all of that so we can model the city, see how the city reacts with the storms. Traffic improvements, about the signalizations that we're doing. The fiber optic cable that we're putting along that trail is to provide connection between all the traffic lights on Paredes Line Road. The street projects, when I came aboard, there were some streets from the CDBG 2017 projects that had not been completed. We completed those. We completed 18. And we're currently working on CDBG 2019 projects. Of course, we got the CIP project as well. We have awarded 2 contracts, and we got 2 more contracts coming up next month. And then, of course, we continue working
and Armando, the CDBG contracts, because they're low mod census tracts, really required us to work on certain streets quicker than other streets because of possible loss of funding. So that's some of the reason why you'll see more streets in certain districts with reconstruction, because we're going to lose the funding if we hadn't.
Yes,
But we need to work on the other districts as well.
That's all I'm asking for, fairness. I'm
Yeah.
not asking for special privilege. It's been 2 years now that District 2 lost a good chunk, and that's, why is it here?
Yeah, elaborate on what Ms. Ramirez is saying. The CDBG 2017 budget was behind schedule, severely at the point where we were risking losing funding, and there were some streets that had not been done, so we jumped on those and get those done. And then 2018, we did finish that off, and then working on 2019. So those, but once we get on track, then we know what streets is to be
A
done.
large part of District 2 also qualifies for CDBG funding, so just,
Now, we're going to be doing a lot of planning when we get into budget sessions, and this CPI report that we're getting in, it's going to help us plan for the streets. So we'll be able to identify and plan properly for the streets that need to be done next year, yes. And not only next year, but maybe 2-3 years down the road, so we'll be proactive.
it's very hard to live on a broken street for 3 years.
Public Works, as big as it is, you saw how wide, how diverse it is. We work with a lot of departments. You know, we work with Parks and Rec. We work with Development, the planning. We work with PD. We're helping them clean the trees at the new shooting range. We work with Finance in trying to see what we can do to improve our procurement process. We're going to advertise the contracts that are coming up for the engineers and et cetera. So, you know, we touch a lot of departments, and I'm very fortunate that, you know, we have worked very well together. And that's in testament to the city manager, the new culture that we have in City Hall. We work as a team, and that's helped a lot. So to complete my presentation, I'm going to show you what the employees have visioned. This is something they came up with, and they voted and approved this. Their vision is to become a Department of Service Excellence, where everybody can be held accountable for the effective use of public resources, and everything that we build and maintain is for the purpose of making Brownsville a better place for all of us to live, work, and play.
Well said. Thank you.
That's why I stopped praising my department. They're excellent. Excelente, I call them. They're excelente. Rain or shine, hot or cold, day or night, we're here for Brownsville. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do want to commend you. I've seen a lot of progress since you've come on board. I think you're doing a great job. You've certainly streamlined the operations, making a lot of progress. You know, obviously, there's no perfect way to go through streets, but just all we can ask is that you be fair, like Commissioner Tetro said, and just be as prompt and efficient as possible on the streets.
And as transparent as possible. We'll get the information out.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can we get our copies of your presentation sent to our emails? Thanks.
Next, we have the work session for zoning ordinance, commercial land use regulations, and parking regulations.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Commission. We're here tonight in work session to present you two proposed amendments to your development regulations, specifically your zoning ordinance dealing with commercial land use regulation and parking. The goal is requested by the Commission to provide regulations that are more user-friendly, pink in character, and facilitate the land development process. The two amendments will impact every commission district. It's regulating commercial land development throughout the city, as well as the parking regulations apply to all land uses, not just commercial parking. So I'm going to allow my staff to assist with the presentation. Martin will be presenting the proposed changes to the zoning regulations addressing commercial zoning, and then Alan will deal with the parking regulations. But we also want to point out, in addition to the zoning ordinance amendments that we're bringing to you, we would like to bring the update to the 2018 building codes, as well as the adoption for the first time the International existing building code. We're really excited about the international existing building code adoption because we use the 2012 building code to regulate construction in Brownsville. Problem with that is the engineers, the construction engineers, construction scientists that have developed the code, that code is developed for new construction. Yet we're required to use that code on our historic buildings, our older parts of town, and existing construction. With the international existing building code in 2018, for the first time, the Code Association has incorporated not just provisions to deal with existing buildings, but historic buildings, and there's actually a section within that code dedicated to historic building reconstruction. And so there's more flexibility in the doorways, window ways, and access. So we're really excited. We'll be bringing that to you next month in order to have the commission consider adoption, as well as the updates to the new construction codes, the International Building Code, the 2018, which is much more user-friendly than it is with the 2012. So with that, I'm going to let Martin, I think, is up first. Go ahead, Martin.
Good evening, Commission, Honorable Mayor. As our director was mentioning, and just to give you a time frame, today we're presenting the work session presentation for the zoning ordinance amendments. Hopefully we'll have it approved by at second reading on April 21st. Since they're coming a bit after we're presenting the building codes afterwards, we're hoping to get those amended and presented by at the second reading on May 5th of this year. So as we had mentioned, the purpose of it is basically to streamline the development. It will also provide the expansion of administrative approval, give us a bit more flexibility for development to make those difficult decisions. It will minimize applicant visits to boards. It will reduce the amount of, or the necessity to have to rezone properties just for area district requirements, so people won't get delayed, or developers won't get delayed with those zoning applications. And just moving forward, we'll start with the interim commercial parking regulations. We'll turn it over to Mr. Garces.
No, I have not.
Mayor and Commission, if I could take just a point of personal privilege, Mr. Garces recently joined the Planning Department. He was born and raised here in Brownsville. He was fortunate to go to College Station and graduate as an Aggie.
Where's that?
Unfortunately, he was hired by the city of McAllen, and he worked his way from McAllen to Harlingen, and we were fortunate enough to hire him away from Harlingen, so we're glad to have him.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. So, good evening. Nice to meet everybody. Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, it's exciting to be here in front of you all for the first time. So I'm just going to dive right into it. Feel free to stop me, and if you have any questions, just go ahead and shoot. So part of the streamline process for the development that we're doing right now, thank you, include revising our current parking regulations. Aside from actually adjusting the parking ratios, we also added tools that should help businesses and business owners open up shop. Some of these tools include on-street parking availability, the use of shared parking or joint use parking, and allowing bicycle parking to use or minimize at least 10% of the required parking. The goal is to achieve the maximum number of uses to promote efficient use of land. And we'll get back to that in a sec because we are also proposing changes to our zoning ordinance. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a chart that we created. It shows Brownsville's most common commercial uses that include retail, office use, restaurants, and so on. It might seem like I'm throwing some numbers at you, but just bear with me. So right now, office use requires 1/3 of a parking space for every 100 square feet of gross floor area, plus 5,600 parking space for every employee. So we have to tell that to developers, to business owners, we have to tell your mom and pop shops. So it's not the easiest formula to explain. As a matter of fact, we actually try to break it down in the chart itself. So, for example, a 1,200 square foot building, you're looking at about 3 parking spaces for the office. But then it gets kind of tricky with employees because you don't really know how many employees you're going to have. The business owner himself or herself might change that, and it can get kind of difficult to find out exactly how many employees you're going to have on site. So. The current parking regulations, staff, the reason why we're in front of you today is because they're a bit outdated and they need to be revised. And I believe the commission feels that way, and that's why we're in front of you today. Planning staff is trying to make the certificate of occupancy process smoother with parking ratios that are feasible and a little bit easier to understand. So what we're proposing is your minimum parking standards and your maximum parking standards. We're basically just going to say you need 1 parking space for 500 square feet of floor area, and that's it if you're in office use. Same goes for the medical office. Retails are a little bit different, but it makes it a little bit easier to understand if you're looking at Brownsville's existing regulations as opposed to what we got right now. So this is more of an example. Kind of just wanted to show you what basically happens to us quite often. So at times, staff will receive a site plan similar to this. It's like a shell. The developer will say, you know what, I'm building a retail center, but I don't know exactly who's going to go in yet, or I'm working on it. So something will get proposed. We'll get some parking based off of retail, and if you look, you actually end up getting something like this, where you have office use mixed with retail, but then a beauty shop, like a personal service beauty shop, will want to come in, and then even a restaurant might want to show up. So these don't necessarily happen all at the same time, but it does make it a little bit tricky when calculating parking. It also makes it a little bit difficult for the business owners themselves. So this is the first time I'm going to use this, so let me try to figure this out. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, the next one. Okay, so office will show up, retail will show up, and we're basically saying that's not an issue. Go ahead. You have an amount of parking for your office use, your retail use. So these guys are good to go. And then we say, okay, well, you guys have your required parking. You guys are going to take up all these. But then a beauty shop might come in, and you're cutting it kind of close. So later on, when, like I said, your beauty shop wants to come in, or your restaurant wants to come in, this is all they got to work with. And unfortunately, maybe these guys over here, but what we're saying is that you guys don't meet the parking requirements. Your other option is to unfortunately find somewhere else or go before the Zoning Board of Adjustment and Appeals for a parking exception, which might not even get approved. So we're working towards avoiding that. And based on Brownsville's current parking ordinance, assuming everybody was filled out, they would need 84 parking spaces. That's kind of a little too much, especially for areas that are already built out. Yeah, so this is what we're proposing. In order to tackle that issue that I just mentioned, we're proposing a shared parking table. We don't have one right now. And it's going to be based off the busiest time of the day, whether it's a week or weekend. We're looking to introduce something, like I said, that we don't have right now, and we're basically saying to the property owner, how many spaces will your retail center, your plaza have at the busiest time of the day? If they're able to have enough parking spaces for their individual use at the busiest time of the day, then they're going to be able to move in there. So that allows staff to be a little bit more flexible. Allows basically, we're trying to promote growth and not hinder business owners. So we're working with them. We're making it just a little bit easier for them, and we're working on streamlining this process, like we said earlier. But it basically allows business owners to move forward with their project. And again, I'll bring up the example I had with the new parking regulations that we're proposing. So if you go to the next slide.
Wait, but what if like someone develops builds a shopping strip and they don't have it fully leased out before they finish construction? What then? How do you know what their maximum need is gonna be?
Well, that's the issue that we have right now. We're gonna eventually happen, like again, we don't expect developers to come in and say everything's gonna be filled out. See, this is who's coming in, but we're gonna have some proposed parking ratio. So they're gonna say, well, for the most part, we believe it's gonna be a restaurant, or we're gonna believe most of the users are gonna be offices. So we'll take that into account. But what we're saying is that when those businesses do want to open up, we won't reject them because we're going to have this shared parking table that will give us some wiggle room.
Okay.
Right, as well as other tools in case they are adjacent to other places, or they want to have a. Yes, right. So in this case, this number that you see here, the office, the retails, those are based on the proposed requirements that are in front of you today. The office, the retail centers, and so on. They're a little bit smaller, and it's not as busy. So in this situation, Commissioner, so let's just say that some of the offices are not, we don't expect all the offices to be there. But when the restaurant wants to open up and we're saying that these are full, we'll check and we'll see their busiest time of day. It looks like it's going to be during the day itself, during the week. So as long as you have 21 spaces here, you should be all right, and we'll allow you to move forward with your project. So in this situation here, as long as you're able to, how do I get that? Oh, how do I erase? Erase. Oh. Oh, there you go. Right, so in this situation, as long as you got the 21 for the entire plaza, we're able to work with you, and that'll be based on the use that comes in. We're gonna have that formula. We'll allow and we'll figure it out based on what's there on site and what's coming in. Then we'll be able to work with you. And as long as that you have parking for the busiest time of the day, you'll be able to go in. Again, we'll use the other tools as well, just in case you don't.
Okay.
But the idea is to not ask owners to go elsewhere or to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustments, but to actually help them go where they want to be.
Just wanted to point out that the reduction of required parking in relation to adding the bicycle parking is not, it's in addition to required bicycle parking. So you actually would have a higher number of bicycle parking spaces in order to get the reduction in the required parking.
It's already
10%, yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. You said reduction and you said increase, so which one is it?
So by adding additional parking for bicycles, they're able to reduce the actual parking for vehicles.
Oh, okay, because you didn't say that, so thanks for clarifying.
So I have a question. What happens if the peak hours of a restaurant change from during the day to at night, just over the course of their business, right? And that creates issues with parking.
Right, no, I understand. So some of these percentages of the time frame are taken off of the Urban Land Institute. So we're taking their recommendations off the uses. Okay. So in this situation here, we didn't include the restaurant, but we'll take it into account when making these calculations.
So just to conclude, the tools we don't have right now are the ability to count for on-street parking if it exists and count that towards required parking. So we now will have a little more flexibility. The other tool is shared parking. If your neighbor has parking that's not being used or is not being used at a certain time of day, you can enter a lease and we can consider that towards required parking. We're not able to do that. And then the time of day, being able to understand the fluctuations in parking demand on that particular site, given their mix of uses. And if we can come up with alternatives to the standard required parking, then we can continue to allow the project to move forward because we can consider time of day parking. Three
But the
important
neighbor
tools.
would be actually the property next to it. Say I'm building a shopping strip, and so I can actually borrow maybe some of the neighbors' parking
Correct, and
spots?
some of those areas may be overparked. Retail has changed. If you think about some of the retail development on Pablo Quisel, some of the older development and some of the newer strip centers that it seem to be short on parking, they would be able to go across the street, talk to the property owner, enter into a lease agreement, and we would be able to count that type of parking towards required parking.
So how do you work so that they don't get towed?
Well, that would be
Or-
between the two property owners to work out. We would just accept the parking agreement as part of our counting towards required parking.
It's not, we're not requiring it, we're just saying it's an option.
It's an
And you can
option.
see that like if the Red Lobster near the mall, I mean, if Red Lobster has an agreement with the mall has tons of parking, is there a way where Red Lobster can, their guests, you know, can use some of the mall parking for their use a certain period of time? And there would be a mutual agreement between both parties that we would accept, that if they're coming to the room, this person has way too much parking, it's really unutilized, it's right next to the other parking lot, it makes sense. And so it's usually very voluntary, they agree, and then we just agree that as well.
So the commission would have the ultimate say to approve it or not, right?
No, this
No.
would be an agreement between the two private parties
And
and
we
the
would
planning
not-
department.
yeah.
With your approval of these changes to the ordinance, the planning department will be able to accept it. So
Okay.
you would allow the department to be able to be more flexible.
This is during the site plan review process.
Any questions? Want to move on to the commercial zoning portion of the presentation? And the Planning and Zoning Commission did review the parking regulations, and they unanimously recommended approval of those amendments. Okay.
All right, so now for the portion of the actual amendment to the use district. So we're looking to actually consolidate. Right now we have, our main commercial use districts are 1C through 6C. That's where most of our uses are carried out, whether it be retail plazas, personal service outlets, or any of the general businesses that we have in the city. So we're looking to consolidate commercial use districts 1C through 4C and combine those into one commercial district titled C1. For the heavier commercial uses, for example, mechanic shops, car lots, things that are more geared towards, I guess you could say, an industrial use. We're looking to consolidate use districts 5C and 6C into category titled C2. We are also looking to exempt the proposed commercial use districts and the current apartment use districts from all area district requirements. Basically, we would be eliminating setbacks, height restrictions, density restrictions, but those will be basically capped using other factors that are within the construction code, which may be landscaping, parking, fire lanes, et cetera. And we will be showing you some examples.
Just to clarify, we're not eliminating setbacks in a sense that the fire code and the landscape code will require setbacks due to the site design. So it's a redundant regulatory requirement between the zoning setback, fire requirement setbacks, and the landscaping and parking requirements.
So you're not eliminating landscaping?
No,
No, no, no, no. And we'll show you some examples right now. So this is the current regulations that the city has. As you can see, we're showing everything all the way from apartment all the way to our ninth commercial or heavy industrial, and the permitted uses and prohibited uses within each category, which makes it it hinders developers sometimes. As we mentioned, they sometimes have to go through what may seem unnecessary or cumbersome processes, such as the rezoning. They have to wait the whole 45 days, have to go through Board of Adjustments, et cetera. So this is a graph basically consolidating the uses and basically showing how the uses allowed in each commercial use district that we currently have, how they will be consolidated into one category. So, two categories, being C1 and C2. And as was mentioned, the heavier uses such as auto sales and auto repair, car wash, and freight terminals, they will be in the second commercial category. Now, another advantage will be that one of the main or more popular uses that we have in the city is apartment. Currently, apartment is only designated or allocated in the apartment use district. That's the only zoning that it's allowed in. Now, we will be transferring over apartment to be allowed into the commercial zonings, and therefore will not, will prevent the developer from having to go through a rezoning process to be able to allow it.
It will also allow for mixed use, retail and apartment development on the same site, which currently is not.
So with the exemption of the area district requirements, as mentioned, we would be eliminating the building setbacks, the elevation, the height, density, the units per acre, lot area, lot width, floor area ratio. But as we mentioned, there will be other factors that will put a cap on these requirements. So just as an example, for the landscape buffer, currently part of the building code, it's required to have a 6-foot landscape buffer where adjacent to rights of way. There's also the utility easements that will distance from, they're typically in the front, they're usually 10 to 15 feet in width, and they're typically along the front of the property. So this will create another width dimension that will be added to the front. Waste enclosures, they have a minimum size of 10 by 10. So all of these requirements will be adding to the development or will limit the buildable area for developments. So beginning with a blank slate, a property with no buildings on it, starting with a 0 lot line for buildable area. And then you have the 6-foot landscape buffer in the front that, as mentioned, that adds to the distance in the front of the property. And then we have the typical easement, 10 feet. Then you take into account the required parking, waste enclosure, other landscaped areas.
So as we eliminate the front yard setback, even though we don't have a regulation of a front yard setback, the 6-foot buffer for landscaping, the utility easement in the front takes it up to 10 feet. And as we see in most development in Brownsville, most commercial developers front load their parking, so that first parking stall is 18 feet in length, and it requires an additional 24 feet to back out. So you're way beyond your front yard setback already, so it's really just a redundant development requirement.
Are we doing anything to incentivize development with back-end parking? And I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, as you said, exactly.
We'll hit that point, I think, on the next couple of slides.
We also taking into account the accessible egress path that runs along the front of the building. And then we have the side and rear means of egress that go along the sides and rear of the structure for equipment purposes. 6 feet of workspace in the rear. So just showing the building footprint. Also within the code, it's required to have a screening fence between commercial uses and residential uses. And just as an increased measure of precaution, or another measure that we're implementing is to have a minimum distance of 40 feet between structures whenever there's a residential use abutting the commercial property. Basically just to protect the residents who have their homes abutting these types of developments.
Actually, under your existing code, in a similar design scenario, this building could be 5 feet from the rear property line, and if the residential structure was facing the other way and that criteria of titled residential use was their side yard, there'd only be 5 feet between the two buildings. And so we want to make sure that we provide adequate buffering and protection between commercial uses and single-family residential uses. This provides additional space. If the commission's not comfortable with 40, that could be increased. Or another alternative would be to not be so pink in this scenario, but to be more red tape and require a site plan review process where you have commercial abutting single-family residential, and they would have to submit a site plan, and we would make sure the landscaping and the dumpster facilities is set back adequately from the residential property. But again, that adds steps and time for development. So we're recommending a 40-foot building-to-building setback. That's arbitrary. The commission can decide to increase that or decrease that.
And this is another, just an example of an overall development with the fire lane. It just adds an additional amount of space between the abutting properties and provides parking in the rear, as was being mentioned.
A couple of comments on this particular illustration. Dr. Gowan, you were asking about parking in the rear. In the event that a building is set back 150 feet or more, the building is then required to have a fire lane around. That requires a 15-foot setback on each side, as well as a lane on the back in order to allow a fire truck to move all the way around. And so property owners can slide that building all the way up to the front building line. It would require rear parking, but then it also requires a fire lane. So there's choices that the site designer needs to make, the developer needs to make as to how they want to site that building. And this way, we're able to offer them both alternatives.
And finally, well, P&Z did review the proposed amendments and they did recommend.
So I have a couple of questions. So I've always been a little confused with the designation, single-family, multifamily. To me, residential is residential. I understand single-family is a house, right? Multifamily is an apartment building, correct? What is a loft downtown considered?
Mixed use.
Mixed use.
Well, that's going to fall into mixed use, right?
Absolutely.
So does this that you presented clean up some of the confusion for all those different types? Because then I believe there's an even different parking requirement for duplexes, which in my mind are single-family homes. And I think that's very confusing.
We're clarifying that in the parking regulations, the difference between apartments and duplexes.
I almost want to.
I would also say, I believe these are temporary parking measures or that have been requested from the developers now to get
Oh, that's fine. I'm not
short-term
objecting
but
to
I
that. I'm
think
just asking.
But I think that's a really good point with the form-based code. It will really speak to, I think, with the heart of many of your questions, which is downtown use, mixed use, and appropriate parking and access from the alley, not having to create additional driveways, but using some of our alleyways as appropriate kind of drive lanes to parking. And so I think that also needs to be explained in terms of why are we here now? Maybe we can incorporate some of the ideas that Commissioner can, but also how that's going to be picked up in the code rewrite as well.
So
I'm not objecting to voting for any of this, but in the scheme of things, as the Unified Development Code continues, these are questions that I have for that. I mean, this is an improvement, but is this as far as we need to go? Are there further improvements that we need? My other second and last question is about both residential and commercial development that is immediately adjacent to any of our trails. And I asked this of the consultants the last time I met with them, is I want to look at ordinances or I don't know the right word, but design standards that require those residential or commercial areas to connect, to provide a connection to the trail that they abut, as opposed to, let's say, Brownsville Country Club. None of the houses along the Battlefield Trail, the Brownsville Country Club, you can't get to the trail unless you go all the way around or go out your back door and put in a fence and put in a gate to get out. And it's cumbersome and it's a barrier. And you can't go from Brownsville Country Club to the mall walking or riding unless you go out on Ruben Torres. And so when people, and I'm thinking specifically about the West Rail corridor that's about to explode.
Right.
So all of those residential neighborhoods and commercial areas should be required to provide a pleasant connection from them to the trail.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we'll address in the UDC, but it would require us to tie that concept into the subdivision regulations and then any trail master plan and then trail requirements that we have, but we could do that.
So I think the time is now,
Yeah.
because that project is going to start taking off any time now.
Okay.
Okay,
Move forward, we'll bring it back in 2 weeks for public hearing and adoption.
thanks.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, we have work session for the coronavirus COVID-19 from the Health Department.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners. Before I begin, I really want to thank all of you for your support and your involvement with our task for COVID-19 as a city, and all the city leadership for their involvement, and really trying to be proactive as much as we can and be aggressive on this.
Ready?
Yes. So what we have is a presentation, kind of on the updates of what the city's been doing. Now, this is a very fluid event, and it's changing pretty much hour by hour for us. So even as we're discussing, some of the events have already changed. So this is just kind of a highlight of some of the topics that we've covered as a city and city departments as soon as it loads here.
And Chief, this is going to include some of the measures that we're taking today as well?
Yes, we can
Okay.
discuss definitely those measures that's taken today. We don't have them in the presentation, but we do have them planned to discuss.
Please. I haven't checked my email since about 2 o'clock this afternoon or something, so I have no idea what the numbers are like or anything else going on right now.
Yes, so right now I believe there was just an update released that the 50th state just had their first confirmed case. And while that's loading, I can give you the latest update that was posted on the Texas Department of State Health Services page, which was in Texas, as of this morning, was 64 cases and 1 death. The death being a 92-year-old male out of Matagorda County. We're just waiting for.
It appears our computer may have a virus.
Yes.
Jessica?
Let me see if I can get on my phone. I'm gonna open it up on my phone so I can just go into some of the highlights here.
While we're working on that, Chief, do you have any other information that
So
may be up to date?
What do I do if you want to talk about the highlights?
Sure.
So today, of course, at 12 noon, you did sign the declaration of a disaster, which is one of our first steps in implementing our emergency response plans for the city of Brownsville. We have been working under our emergency operations center since Friday. We have implemented it, and now we got it working. So
Great. Thank you.
So we're being proactive as much as we can, and there's still a lot more to come. So the first topic we really want to cover is about prevention. That is our main goal, preventing it from spreading in Brownsville as much as we can. It's our best approach that we can take to the coronavirus. If you feel sick, just stay home. That's the overall goal and the overall message. Continue to practice good prevention techniques. Wash your hands frequently for at least 20 seconds. Use hand sanitizer. Avoid shaking hands. And don't touch your face. Cover your coughs and sneezes. And really practice that social distancing of 6 feet or at least arm's length away from people. Which kind of sum up some of the updates. You know, we've halved or reduced occupancy loads through disaster declaration today to 50% of most restaurants, bars, and many public facilities, as well as closing down a lot of public city entities and events as an update for that. Click here. There it is, just close it.
May I ask a question, or would it be better that we would save our questions until the end?
I might be able to cover some of it in the presentation, and if there are questions, I can answer at the end. We're encouraging city employees and residents to practice sensible social distancing, which we covered. If you are in one of the groups that has been identified as high risk, this thing's going, people over 60 years old with underlying health conditions such as heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, kidney disease, or any type of weakened immune system issues, stay home as much as possible. Reduce the possibility of being exposed to the virus. City staff have been actively monitoring the rapidly changing situation related to COVID-19. We're taking a number of proactive steps to ensure business continuity with high standard deliverables while protecting the health and safety of our employees as well as the citizens. Currently, there are no reported cases in Brownsville. We are treating the situation as if we had one and being proactive from that measure. Like I said, we want to reduce the amount of panic within the city. You know, if we've seen it in the grocery stores, we've seen it everywhere. It's safe to prepare, but not over-prepare. But it is safe for us as a city to over-prepare rather than under-prepare. Situational awareness for city employees. To ensure our employees have every opportunity to seek medical attention, our employees have been encouraged to stay home if they're sick. All non-essential business travel has been suspended throughout the city, and we're encouraging all city employees and all Brownsville residents to enroll in our Emergency Alert Brownsville, our Civic Ready program, which can be found on the cob.us website. If you click on the coronavirus link, there is a get updated link to there, or you can follow this link right here. Sign up for that, and we can get you updated as we receive any of the information. Facilities plan. City facilities are scheduled for cleaning utilizing the CDC approved disinfectants, and that's real important that not all disinfectants are approved for the coronavirus. Read the back of the label, look at the CDC requirements, and use those approved disinfectants. I believe a lot of the city buildings since this presentation is created have been closed. So we are still going to be working on disinfecting a lot of these facilities in this time. And additional hand sanitation stations have been located throughout the facilities. Let's see if it goes. There it goes. So info sharing. So right now, we have our internal websites and our external sites. We have our city website. That's one of our best locations right now to get information. We're trying to update that as we get information. We have our Civic Ready, which we encourage all the public to sign up for any alerts that may go out. We have our mobile message boards that are placed along the highways right now. I believe one's in Alton Glory area. We have our 546 help call center. Interdepartmental communications, we're doing morning conference calls. Informational posters have been posted throughout all city facilities, and as well as hygiene literature. So some of the measures and calls and information that we're receiving are coming from internal COVID-19 working groups that's happening daily every morning. with city leadership. Those calls are happening at 9 a.m. every morning. We're starting tomorrow the external calls with external partners, including hospitals, nursing homes, and several retailers around the city to keep them informed and see how they can help us grow our plans. So we're all have the same message, we're all on the same page. Cameron County conference calls daily. COVID-19 statewide calls have been happening daily. Statewide governor's office calls have been happening daily, and then the White House briefings as needed or as that's scheduled by the White House. Our leadership team. So during this involvement, it's going to take a team and an army to really fulfill some of these requests. From city management, legal staff, department directors, our medical director, John Wells, emergency management coordinator, and various assistant directors and supervisors. Leadership team under the direction of myself, emergency management, myself as the assistant emergency management coordinator and chief. We're developing the roles and responsibilities under the Federal Emergency Management ICS structure. And what the ICS structure is, and here's a sample of it here. And what the Incident Command System is a management system designed to enable effective and efficient domestic incident management by integrating a combination of facilities, equipment, personnel, procedures, and communications operating within a common organizational structure. Basically, this structure has been defined to define our roles and know how we're going to best respond to this, depending on and having that one voice and that leadership throughout the city. Some of the updates is kind of blank because there's been a lot happen today. Enhanced medical screenings through our dispatch system has occurred for all of our first responders. So our first responders are the frontline responders to some of these questionable calls. If people are complaining that they feel they have an illness, we have placed a paramedic in our dispatch center to start screening those calls. Our protocols are changing, and the way we respond is to not just go over there and take the person to the hospital. We're trying to facilitate the right place for them to go or the right treatment for them without having to take them out of the residence if we don't have to. But we're counting on the physicians to make those calls, getting in contact with their personal physicians or contacting the hospital or our medical director.
So these are people that are calling for an ambulance?
Yes, they're calling for an ambulance, and our screening process starts now with the paramedic in the 911 center.
And are you coordinating, I imagine you are, with the clinics? Because as a Suclinica employee, I just got a notice today that part of our internal screening process when a patient comes to the clinic is that if they meet certain criteria, we're going to call an ambulance.
Yes. So that's going to be part of the external calls.
Okay.
That's the line of communication that we need to get to all the clinics out in the field. We are getting a lot of emails, a lot of messages on what our procedures are. We're following CDC guidelines as much as possible, but that is very fluent and it's changing. It's very dynamic right now, hour to hour. So we're updating even our paramedics on conference calls. We just got off a conference call with all of our stations, all of our paramedics a little while ago, trying to share as much information we have with them. But this is going to be treated almost on a case-by-case basis, depending on their illness and how they meet the criteria.
And to the credit of our team also, I would say that, like you said, Chief, it's changing so much that we tried to talk to as many entities as we possibly could yesterday before going forward with the plan, but we just had to move forward on it. And we're going to start to probably see some more information as to certain case-by-case issues and things like that.
Yes, and I know this morning I met with some of the commissioners in both hospitals.
Right.
That was a really important meeting, and the conversation needs to continue to happen. I've been in plenty of meetings probably with the mayor today, different conferences, different press conferences, and information sharing sessions. So that's just been continuing and growing. But we do have a lot of resources here in Brownsville that we're going to utilize with these clinics. We're definitely involving them. As far as
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have
Yes.
a quick question about our staff. So our EMTs, are we able to test them, or is there any way that they have access to, they're on the front line and they're going and they're picking up these people who, they're asking them, what is your name? What is your age? What are your symptoms? They're in an ambulance. Our ambulance has just got a lot smaller. So my concern is the city doing everything that we possibly can be for our EMTs to make sure that they know that when they go home with their children and come and greet them when they get home, when they, lay in bed next to their wife or their husband, whatever, what more can the city be doing to ensure that we're not having any kind of transmission like that?
Yes, definitely. Right now, we're providing, and we do have a good stock of our personal protective equipment that we ordered ahead of time. So we have plenty of personal protective equipment that the CDC is recommending they wear. So we are, like I said, we did change our protocols. We're encouraging many steps, let's just say, for each person to take after responding and how to disinfect. And actually, we just assigned another paramedic to assist with disinfecting ambulances out at the Alton Glory Station. And we're taking all the measures we can with the CDC. Now that it is changing, like I said,
Every
daily.
day.
So we're having to adapt to that and that response. We're working on plans for continuum of service in the what-if scenarios, the plan A, plan B, and plan C with paramedics. We had that conversation today with all of our staff. But we are utilizing all of the CDC required equipment
Okay.
right now. As far as the updates as well, as you will know that the mayor held a press conference today for a disaster declaration. Do you have the declaration there? So there's been many changes how the city operates within the city of Brownsville, the whole community. I don't know if you want me to read some of them or go through them, Mayor.
We did have a press conference on that.
Yes.
I think if you want to go over some of the more important ones, that's great. They're all obviously important, but if you want to go through some of the ones that you think may affect people a little bit more, go ahead.
They're also posted on YouTube right now.
That's what I was going to
Yes.
ask. I've gotten questions about where we can actually refer to this.
Okay.
Where exactly is the document itself posted?
It's on social media.
It's on social media right now, but we'll get it up on our page, right, on the webpage.
Okay, both, so the COB website and social media as well?
Yes.
Very good.
Yes. Just some of the highlights. One is just restricting restaurants and certain facilities to 50% occupancy load, practicing social distance, and really the highlight of it is to encourage pickup and delivery services from restaurants and closing, down the dining room as much as possible, and just really practice good hygiene and disinfecting.
Is that mandatory or suggested?
And does that include daycares for children and adults?
So the daycares was covered to 50% of their legal occupancy or 50 occupants, whatever is lower the number.
All those, Commissioner, are going to be mandated. And however, if there's any that need to be further discussed, if maybe we put something in there that really is an issue, then we can still have a conversation about it. But for now, that is a mandatory
Yes.
request.
All city libraries are closed. We're just encouraging a lot of the residents to use as many online services as possible, to not come directly to the city offices, or maybe even call the departments for any concerns or questions. A lot of community events, large gatherings, we're encouraging, right now, no more than 50 throughout the whole community, whether, it's a city entity or any event, really a public gathering, no more than 50. And pretty much all boards, commission, and bureau meetings are canceled right now.
Why are you using 50 if the national one was 10?
Because it is very fluent. It is, like I said, it's very dynamic right now. It was 50.
Yeah, no, I know.
And now it just changed. The CDC hadn't updated down to 10 until just today or recently.
So do you expect to reduce that number?
It possibly could reduce if we need to be a little stricter, and that could be another conversation.
Right, and that's something we can continue to look at. This is something for 7 days. It's a 7-day, I'm going to use the term order, but it's a 7-day guideline. And as things continue to change, obviously we can revisit if necessary. The key thing here for example, on the 50 was the distance.
Yes, the
Also
social
recommending
distancing.
keeping a certain distance away.
Which we're still not following.
Yes, the social distance. Like I said, the declaration's for 7 days and could be expanded from there.
So churches will not have, I'm just wondering, they can't have their services or?
No, the churches, places of worship are limited to 50% of their occupancy, so they can have worship. The thing is that they would have to practice social distancing, so in terms of the 6 feet from it, it is still allowed to have.
And there's certain
But
exceptions as well.
I would say that certain archdioceses or certain religions are actually canceling services, but this order says you can have it, except you have to reduce your occupancy, allowable occupancy maximum by 50%, and also practice social distancing within that. So you don't want a cluster of everybody sitting together, but practice that.
And there is exceptions to this as well, transportation, airports, terminals. The airport terminal specifically also is it's closed, limited to only ticketed passengers as
Yes.
well.
Yes, and a lot of businesses here in Brownsville are being proactive and had already moved to these measures, or still moving towards the measures of closing dining rooms, closing local gyms. So there are a lot of businesses that are already taking their own measures for the sake of public safety.
But then, so right now it's still voluntary, or will you actually
It's
enforce
mandated
that?
for
Yes,
7 days.
it's
Right.
mandated for 7 days.
Right. 7
At
days.
this time. Yeah. So this goes in effect, some of
Yeah.
these mandates go immediately and some of them are effective noon tomorrow.
Tomorrow, right.
I would just like to remind the public that we're not doing it to limit your church. Absolutely not. We would never do that. We're not doing it to inconvenience you from your dining experience. We're not doing it for any of those reasons other than to try and keep you and your family, your parents, your grandparents, anybody in your family. My daughter has a heart condition, and I am terrified. She is a 12-year-old little girl, but I don't know what this virus could do to her. And so it doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter what you look like. We don't know what conditions we have going on inside of us. And I would just ask that the public really, really respect, even though we're asking 50, if you can do 10, even better. That's just my 2 cents. Sorry.
I agree.
And so when it comes to enforcement, how are you handling?
So on the order, it does state who's enforcing. We do have public health, fire marshal's office, some of our code enforcement, some of our traffic officers that are listed on there that will be enforcing these measures.
So are you giving warnings at the
It is
beginning?
up to a Class C misdemeanor, up to a $500 fine.
But
Yes,
on the
yeah,
outset?
Yes, but our
Or
goal is to go out there.
education?
We did have training out there today. Our first goal is education
Education,
purposes.
sure.
Reach out there and
For sure.
really understand their needs as well.
Absolutely.
Will those reviewers be visiting nursing homes?
We are in contact with nursing homes and the state. I know state has changed some of the licensing requirements for nursing homes and visitation hours. So right now, they're either limited or no visitors at all. They are screening people as they enter, even their employees. So a lot of them have even disabled their keypads so that nobody enters without being
I
screened.
believe it was Washington State, wasn't it? That had
Yes.
such a terrible experience with a nursing home.
Yes, we're working closely with the nursing homes and getting information from them. And they will be part of the external calls as well.
Are we taking temperatures at the airport of people who are coming in, spring breakers that are using that airport? Are we checking everybody that comes in?
Not at this time.
Can we do it? Is there something that restricts us from doing it?
I think Mr. Walker was on a call earlier.
Yes, that was actually one of my concerns was I think it's prudent to, if you're able to trace the origin or where the traveler's coming from, and if that city is a city that's been exposed or that has confirmed cases, I think we should screen those individuals. However, airports are not doing that. Airlines themselves are grounding certain flights. Airlines themselves are taking certain precautions, but the airports, as of now, are not doing that.
Can
We
we
have
do
a
it?
bus station too.
Right.
Think about it.
Can we do
Yeah.
that at the bus station in the airport just for preventing?
I think that's something that, since Mr. Walker is really the subject matter expert on that, I've asked him for a recommendation, to come back to us with a recommendation on that. Oh, here he is.
He's right here.
He's here.
So our only concern is that it would probably be a voluntary basis. There's no mechanism the airport has to actually compel anyone to submit to any sort of screening. So right now, until we have, some legal basis to do it, we don't have, any other kind of permission. I don't know. Legal wants to weigh in.
It all depends. If the CDC, some of these become mandates rather than recommendations, then law enforcement can probably get involved. But at this stage, until we can distinguish between items of caution and items that become mandatory in nature, then that would definitely be something that the entities can take into consideration when enforcing these measures.
Right.
I know with respect to B Metro, we are reviewing certain guidelines such as seating will be reduced approximately 50% to allow more distance between passengers on all fixed lines. Seating on paratransit service will be limited to 2 riders per trip. Seating at La Plaza Terminal lobby will be reduced by approximately 50%. TSC, UT, RGV, and those schools that are currently closed, those lines will remain canceled until such time that they resume. B Metro will be encouraging riding during off-peak hours between 9 and 2. A greater emphasis is being taken on disinfecting surfaces frequently touched by public at our facilities and buses daily, and we'll be communicating any changes in schedules as needed as well.
In addition, the airport is restricting access to the terminal to ticketed passengers or people that are picking up a rental car or something. They have to actually have business in the facility. So that's going to reduce the meters and greeters and just a crowd of people. So that happened this afternoon.
I think that's
Following
very
the-
important because we, as a community, we don't tend to go anywhere by ourselves. We
Right.
take the Thea and the next door neighbor and the 2 kids from down the block, and we need to stop doing that.
Right. Yeah, so following the mayor's declaration, we went ahead and instituted that at the airport.
I would maybe like to see, well, no, it might not make any sense. Maybe just offer that service or like a sign. Do you feel like you have a fever? You know, you
Right.
can come this way.
That's something we could work with the health department to
Maybe not mandatory,
arrange.
but let's say I land somewhere and I
Sure.
feel not well, and I don't want to make a big deal. I don't want to go look for a doctor. I don't want to go, you know, cause an ambulance to come pick me up, but check my temperature and then go from there.
Mr.
We're
Walker,
working on the drive-through.
right,
For that
but,
kind of stuff.
but also,
Screening and the-
I'm sorry, Commissioner, but also, Mr. Walker, if you could, I know you're going to do this, but just continue to stay vigilant as far as what airlines are doing, what other airport terminals are doing. I have a feeling this is going to change at some point very soon. So let's kind of try and stay on top of that and see what others are doing, just in case it gets to this point. I want to make sure that we do it quickly.
Absolutely, yeah, there's a daily call with the airline industry, airports, airline, and the regulators. So TSA, CBP, well, all of DHS as well as the FAA are all on a joint call every day.
And I believe you did state that one of the airlines has grounded their certain percentage of their flights.
All the airlines have grounded portions of their flights. Up to 40% of domestic flights have been grounded for various airlines. The 2 airlines we have serving the Valley, Brownsville specifically, is American and United. American's cut back about 20% domestic, 50% international, and United's cut back about 40% international, I believe, and 40% domestic.
Okay, thanks.
We have not seen a reduction from either airline for Brownsville for
Not
the
yet.
schedule through April, but we're expecting that to change.
Oh, wow.
Thanks.
So our emergency operations center has been activated, like I said, that's Friday. A level 4 is normal operations. There's no significant emergency present. Right now, we're currently operating at a level 3, which means a significant emergency has not yet occurred, but a higher than normal level of readiness is warranted because of increased vulnerability to a special hazard. And that's where we're operating right now. Our emergency operations center is open Monday through Friday right now, 8 to 5. At a moment's notice, we can escalate that to an escalated response condition, which the scope of emergency has expanded beyond that which can be handled by local responders. Normal state and local government operations may be impacted or impaired. So we can upgrade our emergency operations centers and bring in more partners if needed. But right now, we are operating at a level 3.
My next question, sorry to have so many
Are
questions.
you finished yet? Or?
Almost.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead and
just
finish.
And this part will be for public health.
Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. So a big part of what we're doing is why. So these demographics are particular to Brownsville. We we took the age brackets of Brownsville and we took at the risk levels. If you look, the 0 to 9 all the way to 40-year-olds are doing very well globally through the coronavirus. As you go from 40 years old to 60 years of age, 59 rather, years of age, you are considered medium risk. This slide does not include any age-adjusted for morbidities, comorbidities, obesity, diabetes, and so forth. This is based on straight numbers. When you get into the age bracket of above 60 to 80-plus-year-olds, you start looking at some different outcomes. So the why is we're doing this because in Italy, the trending pattern, if we don't do something that's significant, our current angle of the, as they call it, of the wave going upward, we're tracking at the same angle that Italy and Europe did. So this slide is important because although most young people and middle-aged people will be able to be okay, we're doing this because of our legacy individuals, our individuals who are above 60. They will be the ones who will have to deal with hospitalization, the ICUs, and so forth. So they're the ones at most risk. So pre-existing conditions, as I mentioned, are currently one of the things that does worry us about Brownsville. While we do have a young population, as you saw in the previous graph, we do have issues related to cardiovascular disease, diabetes, respiratory, high blood pressure, cancer, and obesity. And there's 3 asterisks under obesity because the current situation coming out of Europe is finding that this is a big contributor to some poor outcomes in middle-aged people. So something that you may have seen and reading the papers, or you may have heard, is flattening the curve. And I'm going to repeat this for the benefit of our audience who may not be familiar with this, and I'm going to try and explain this. The pink zone, this is what we saw in China and in other countries where mitigation efforts did not occur and prevention did not occur quickly. The dotted line represents the capacity of the healthcare system, how many ventilators, how many beds, the turnaround times for hospitalizations. And then the blue line comes with protective measures, one of which is the mayor's order at noon today. So without taking aggressive measures, we would not then be playing our role in changing what I would call the angle of this curve. And
The dotted line is our hospital capacity?
So it's a national number.
National.
It's not necessarily particular to us here, but it's the same premise that we need to break the chain of disease that's going to go on, and we have to assume from a point of it may already be out in the community, although there's no confirmed case, we have to assume that there's localized cases because you have one in Reynosa and Tamaulipas, you have a death in Matagorda County, you have cases in San Antonio and Houston, so it would be very smart of us to be extremely proactive at this time. So all these steps help to what we now call flatten the curve. So if you hear that, it's referring to this. That's it at this time. We are willing to take any more questions if you wish.
So I have a question. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Thank you so much, because you're right. As a director of women's health, I get a new notice every single day, and you have to read through it all to find the differences, and it's maddening. I think that you are the experts that we will rely on as a community, but also as this commission, to keep us up to date with all of the rapidly changing things. I think in one of your first slides, you said that there were no cases in Brownsville. I think anytime that you or us use that phrase, we need to follow it with that we know of, because we're not doing universal or even random testing anywhere south of San Antonio. So we really don't know if we have any cases. We just know there are no documented cases. And if you have a doctor that says, you know what, when you get a heart attack, then you should change the way you eat and exercise, you need to find a new doctor, as John would attest. The point is not to wait until you have a case, because that means you've waited too long. The point is to prevent the case from ever happening. And finally, I think that it's important as our leadership, and I include you as well, we should be writing and calling regularly to our state reps, to our governor, to our national reps, and telling them that we need testing equipment and we need drive-through testing. And unfortunately, San Antonio is the only city in the state of Texas that is going to trial a drive-through test. Yet our people have epidemic rates of diabetes and therefore heart disease. Our people, 70% are not insured. So many of the people will stay home until they get super sick, and then they'll call your ambulance to go to the emergency room, and who knows if there's enough capacity in the emergency rooms to cover that. So drive-through testing or random testing, it may be our only salvation, and I think we should really put the pressure and have them understand that because of our demographics, because of our poverty, underinsured rates, and high rates of diabetes, it will be very devastating here to even have modest numbers of coronavirus.
So let me add, since we began the calls in mid-January with the state, almost every 4 o'clock meeting has resulted in us forming an email to the state, depending on which agency. When we heard about the Seattle event and regarding the nursing home, we immediately started writing emails to those state agencies. You need to get your inspectors down, what's going to go on. So when Governor Abbott announced some of the things that we're doing, we were happy to see that we felt some of the pressure we were putting on through those daily emails to them we're having a change. On the drive-through, we've been having that conversation. It's a logistical issue, but most importantly, the test kits have not come out. They're still not out, and just speaking in a very honest manner to our audience out there, they just haven't been made available quick enough and fast enough so that local authorities can seize the day. And for that reason, we find ourselves now trying to be very aggressive in the manner that we're doing, because we're having to compensate for something that should have been in place much sooner.
And that is the absolute best statement you made. That is 100% true, and that's why we're taking such aggressive action, because of the lack of tests.
Despite the testing kits and all that, we talked this morning about other things like for the drive-through, which was just basic screening questions, temperature, and other things that you can already get started with, right? I mean, we discussed that this morning.
Well, Mayor and Commissioners, I try to take a passive role here and let these guys do most of the work. But basically, as of 12 o'clock this afternoon, the county has tested 10 people. 7 out of that 10 has been negative, 3 are pending. And the county does not have any, they have 125 test kits, and they're using about 25 per day. That's the biggest resource that we have available. Right now, we turn into the private labs, Quest, LabCorp, and we're waiting for them, and they're dispensing maybe anywhere between 3 to 5 kits per day. I checked with my colleagues up in Hidalgo County, they don't have any kits. So the problem, WHO recommends, the World Health Organization recommends test, 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 but it's just not available for us. And Dr. Gowan, you're absolutely correct. We have a population here is very suspect with multiple comorbidities, but if we can just do it best we can with screening them, starting with the paramedics and the dispatch, and trying to allocate which paramedics and which services they receive, as opposed to our guys being exposed to everyone and everybody there. And we are working with a lot of the doctors and with a lot of the clinics. I spent this afternoon with Paula Gomez with Brownsville Community Health Clinic, working out a program with her, and they are ready to do the drive-through, and they're ready to do some screenings. But again, we're all limited because of the screening. And her and I and Dr. Castillo from the county sit down and had a conversation on how we can work together to provide this. And with Commissioner Meese and the other commissioners this morning, we're working with the hospitals to create a drive-through, because it's a new entity, like you said, that we are just now begin to work on that and develop that type of sense. And what a lot of people are actually doing is working together with the box stores, the CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart, and in our case, HEB, to do a screening situation. And we'd like to develop a relationship with them where we can just put a temporary tent in a parking lot and have people drive through. And we collect the data, do a screening test, and those who are suspect, now we can use prudently the test kits that we have available to screen those individuals. But that's the best that we can do right now in terms of trying to screen and modify this onset. The other things that can happen with the Texas Medical Board just since Friday, is that prior to Friday, for teleconferences and telehealth, you and I had to meet face to face. Now they're changing their rules and regulations where you can call your doctor that you've never met before and actually create a doctor-patient relationship, and he can treat you over the phone and field your questions and your dismays. The objective here is to treat as many people as possible and have them remain at home and don't congest the emergency rooms or overwhelm our EMS service, because again, it's the cross-contamination. So if we can keep this to a minimum, that's the best we can do. But all of this is fluid, and we are changing every day, and we are talking on an hourly basis trying to develop this. And we're going to have another meeting again on Friday morning with the collective group here to collaborate on trying how we can progress and go forward in the future. But the main thing now is we have a limited amount of testing, and the testing we have done have been negative thus far. But as Art says and the mayor says, we're going to assume that we have more cases than we realize. They just simply now have been identified. So by curtailing our activities and keeping our distance and personal hygiene, we can abate as much of this as we possibly can. But we're going to try to do the best we can with the services that we have.
This morning, y'all also mentioned that there was a Medicare number, right?
Right. There's a 1-800 Medicare, and there's a 1-800 Medicaid number that you can call, and they're doing telehealth as well. Good point.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thanks for
put
bringing
that
that
up on our site.
I just want to end by saying, city employees right now have a teledoc access, which is one of the apps, and they've been using it. So from our workforce perspective, I really like that our workforce has begun to use that. The last thing I want to close by saying, as far as the public health, things are moving. This is uncharted territory. If this was a hurricane ICS, this would be a Category 5. And I'm not saying that out of commentary. I was looking at a pandemic influenza plan, and it puts this, the equivalent if we were facing Category 5 hurricane.
Commissioner, you had a question?
Go ahead.
One more point. Now, I'm going to date myself here, but we've dealt with the La Tienda building collapse. We dealt with anthrax, Ebola, Zika, swine flu, H1N2, and these two departments and this city has done fairly well. And we have adapted to this, and we have been very malleable in working with this. So this group of individuals that you have here and some of the seniority that you have in these two departments have been around for a while, and we are very, very malleable in trying to work with everybody to get this done. But we've seen these issues before, and we've done the best that we can to deal with those.
Thank you, Doctor.
So, Doctor, my question is, let's say that I'm somebody at home right now, and I'm watching on TV, and I find out that only about 10 tests have been taken so far because there are no tests available. Who, as a citizen, I'm not powerless. I have the ability to write my representatives and my elected officials. Who exactly would I be directing my concern to about the fact that Brownsville and Cameron County have not been given a significant number of tests?
That's nationwide, though.
To answer your question, you would probably have to go to the state health department. But there's no distribution, there's no allegations, there's no appropriateness here because we're dispensing what's available. And we got caught flat-footed with this, and there are new kits coming out by various companies right now that's faster than what we have available. It's just not, the kit's just not available. Nobody's cutting us short, it's just not available.
But
They
you
can't
should still
manufacture them
write
fast
and
enough.
write to
Exactly.
all your
Right.
elected officials,
And
because when they do become
Exactly.
available, if the only people that writing are people from Houston and Dallas and Seguin,
They go
then
there.
guess who's gonna get the test first?
Teresa
And
will.
that's what I'm asking. I know there's none
Right.
available.
We will start
But
with the
when
health
they,
department.
when they do become available, we want to make sure that Brownsville, because of the threats we have with spring breakers coming in and all kinds of things, we're just in a different location. We are on a border. We have all these things going against us, and we want to make sure that we are the first test kits and the first community that's on top of it and not caught flat-footed like this.
Doctor, the tests that you referred to by the county, are those test kits the same ones that the hospitals were using? Were they getting them from the county? I forgot.
No, they're
So
coming
they
from
have their
various
own little,
sources.
they have some
Okay,
sort.
now, these are corporations who have their sources, and like I say, LabCorp and Quest and other companies have their own test kits. There's at least 3 different versions of this test kit, and then there's another one they're looking at that contains antibodies, IgM and IgG antibodies, which tells you if you've been exposed and if you have developed antibodies to it. There's a lot of tests in the making right now that's being made available because of this urgency. But I will start with the Texas Health Department,
Okay.
okay? And
Thank
it
you
comes
for
down
that.
to the county, then it comes down to us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
So one of the big takeaways from the meeting this morning is, we need to have a Plan B and Plan C for facilities should we reach capacity in our hospitals and our clinics. I think we need to start working on that right away. I don't know what there is right now, because I didn't come.
Each one of the hospitals have their own contingency plan. Each one of the hospitals we're working with, and they're part of our command center here. And we're all working together, and that's why we're going to continue to have these meetings on Friday to determine where we need to go.
I think we need to really work with the city, because we have a lot of facilities as well that we can potentially offer to help with that effort.
I got a phone call randomly. Some guy was asking me, did I have any vacant property that they could probably set up a center with? So there are a lot of people out there talking about things and looking forward to this. Yes, we do need to have a plan A, B, and C, and that's why we're going to meet on a regular basis to try to establish those plans.
That's great. Thank you.
I know that we are meeting with the Brownsville ISD, did invite us to their board meeting on Saturday to participate. I know they have some closed schools around the city, and so we're looking at if that's needed, what's our plan B and what are those areas that have buildings, and maybe we can already prep them and be proactive with what we may need in the upcoming future.
So, thank you. So I was going to ask my last question. The doctor's offices that are here in Brownsville right now, are they all using the CDC recommendations? Right now I got a text that somebody had flu-like symptoms. They stayed in their car. The doctor came out. The doctor saw them, called in their prescription. They were on their way home. And I text the city manager, is everybody doing this? And I'm finding out that it's not being done everywhere. Is there some way that do you have any information on that? Is just any way that we can be more in communication with doctors' offices to prevent issues like this? Should
At the
somebody have it?
hospital yesterday, they had a meeting, or last week, I should say, and they talked to the doctors and discussed the plan, but you cannot obligate physicians to do what they have to do. And you're right. The ideal is to do a screening where we meet you in the parking lot, ask a lot of questions, do your screening, and call in the antiviral or whatever case you got. If you have strip, we treat the strip. But you cannot mandatory make doctors do everything.
Yeah. Thank you.
The other part to your question and your answer is we're fielding calls from doctors' offices locally, and we're tracking those calls, and we're sending those to the appropriate, whether it's a county or the state, depending on the nature of the call. But the hospitals have now been actively having training sessions on coronas for nurses, doctors, and other allied health providers.
And I do my share of sending emails to all my colleagues on a regular basis. They're probably tired of hearing from me by now.
Good. I'm glad you're on top of it.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Wait, so I haven't said anything, and I'm sorry to end on a negative note, but in hearing you all, I appreciate the uncertainty. I appreciate that you're stepping it up. But I'm seriously disturbed by the fact that we didn't really hear much from you all until today. If I hadn't happened to see it on Facebook that you made this public address and that you declared a state of emergency, I wouldn't have found out. People are probably just still not even finding out. So the fact that we went from 0 to 60 like overnight really bothers me. It's affecting a lot of business owners around here. I've gotten so many calls from even BISD, like what do? We had plans for doing some things. People who have daycares, people who have all sorts of businesses, and all of a sudden it comes to a standstill. So for that, I apologize to all these small business owners because they're really scared. It's their livelihood. They don't see it anymore. And so they don't even have like 24 hours to get their business ready. So I apologize to the citizens of Brownsville for that. I hope that from here on that we're a lot more we communicate much more frequently, and that we don't alarm people, because honestly, yes, we don't know. It might be a much more serious situation than what we know now, and because we don't have the proper testing or the stuff. But at the same time, a lot of people are going to be alarmed, or they're going to take it to the next level just because of how we've gone from 0 to 60 in just a matter of a few hours. I also want to take an opportunity to commend HEB. I have seen that they've been great leaders in all of this. I happened to be at the Southmost HEB on Saturday, and that's when they implemented their new hours. They immediately took on the responsibility of limiting quantities that people do. I went to the HEB on Paredes yesterday, and the way they flowed they did the lines outside, people, please be patient, and it's really for the benefit of everyone. We actually could learn a lot from them, and I wish that more people took the initiative of leadership that they have. And there's still like a lot of unanswered questions that I have. What do you do about pets? What do you do? Can you take a walk outside? I hope that people don't start self-policing. Oh, why are you outside? You coughed. You're like contaminating. Those are serious concerns that I think still need to be addressed, and I hope that people are keep a rational mind in all of this, because that's the only way we can get through it.
So I wanted to answer.
If I could just make one clarification. Restaurants and bars, it's effective March 18th, 2020. So it wasn't effective immediately. It is effective tomorrow.
But it was not dictated by their actions. It was dictated by the mayor's choice to initiate that based on what the governor did, what the county judge did. So
Right.
their actions were already in process.
Right.
So he didn't react to what they were doing.
Well,
right?
the way it works is, this is a team. So yesterday, this happened obviously very quickly. So I have the power under the Emergency Acts to be the person that declares this.
Yeah.
So the whole team can testify to this. Yesterday, we had a very frank discussion, and I gave them a very stern talking to yesterday as well about a lot of this. And this was done based upon all the information available, what other communities around the country are doing, definitely based upon the declarations made by our governor and our county judge. And I believe it's important to work as a unified front when we're facing this. I see this as a very serious thing, and based on the data, looking at the statistics, Italy is, like Dr. Rodriguez said, the best example of what we're facing. So I had to make a move to protect our community as soon as possible. And other communities around the country have done this already, and I understand the effects that it has on business, small business in particular. That's the same thing that's happening across the country, but the bottom line is we had to move, and we had to move quick in order to contain this as best as possible, based upon the reality of the testing availability and the likelihood that we have people that are infected in our community already.
I would, go ahead.
Okay, before they leave, can we take item C of the consent agenda out of order and pass a resolution creating this task force that's already meeting and name some of them? Dr. Rodriguez has some names, if that's okay with everybody.
Yes, I just have one last question for city management. One of the things that I've been getting a lot of concerns or questions about is the flea market. Sometimes the flea market can draw over 5,000 people in one day. Are we doing anything to regulate the crowds at the flea market, or what standards would they fall into?
So
Is that on Mito?
No, it's
that's in
Brownsville.
Brownsville.
Okay.
Sir, you're the mayor.
So we've had those conversations under the
We
new
got a question about on Mito.
expanded resolution. We actually will be going out to the flea market. It was part of the training that we had earlier this afternoon as soon as the new proclamation went, or the resolution went out. That will be part of the conversation with the owners of the flea market. Historically, they've worked very well with the health department. I don't see why they won't be part of being part of the solution. So at this point, we are having those conversations, and that's not the only business. We've had conversations about other particular adult daycares and so forth. So
they would have to limit.
Yes.
So
Per the private or community gatherings of individuals over 50 are banned until further notice. And that does not apply to, of course, hospitals, airports, bus stops, terminals, but those types of private entities would limit that place of gathering by that
Do
number.
they have a CO, or how, what's their capacity?
So historically, when I've dealt with the flea market, I just put my cards on the table and say, I think at this point you really should be considering. As a public health director, my stance would be I would rather them not have a flea market until we know what conditions we have. But they can come back and say, well, the resolution only allows us half. But as a public health director, knowing what potentially we may be facing here, I want to show what I showed you today and what it is that we're facing.
And I do want to be clear as well. I didn't come up with these recommendations or these orders on my own. It was based on data, and the team recommendations over the course of probably a 12 to 15 hour period And something like this we needed swift, aggressive action. The last thing I was going to do was overwhelm our hospitals and have a real crisis on our hands when people are pounding on the doors of the hospital because they don't have enough rooms. So I'm not concerned about my electability. I'm not concerned about my next election. I'm concerned about protecting our community as soon as possible and taking the necessary steps to do that.
And I would just like to add for the public to know that pretty much everybody here on the commission has been extremely active and trying to meet with people. Right now, they're asking everybody to stay home and not be out in public. But yet here we are running in to make sure that we're doing everything that we can within our power to calm the city down. And that's all I have to say. And if I could say anything else, is stop hoarding food. That's all.
Anybody else? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
We
just
really
have-
appreciate
So
it.
can we take item C up?
Yeah, sure.
I have a quick comment. There's new information coming out from the Small Business Administration about potential programs to help small businesses. And that information is coming out slowly, and we'll be distributing that via social media as soon as we get that.
Thanks, John.
We had that conversation earlier today, the SBA, and we actually had to talk with Ms. Zalesi earlier about getting that information to the Small Business Administration.
One of the things that I would like is either we have the capability to call in emergency meetings, but you don't need to meet the 72-hour requirement. So we could do that, or at least make sure that you all, I think this is probably the biggest way of disseminating information, city commission meetings, because we have a high viewership online. And so if we could leave today knowing that in 2 days you're going to report back again. I don't know if we need to be present or, have some consistency, and then that way people know, okay, this is where I'm going to get my information. Or on the city's Facebook page or on the city's website, at 12 o'clock noon and at 5 o'clock you're going to get updates. It doesn't matter if the status hasn't changed, but people want that information, especially with today's society. They want information right away.
Right. And as many updates as possible on a daily basis and keep it regular to where people know.
So
that they can
we
look
have a
there.
daily deadline at 5 o'clock every day. We update the website with the latest. The latest tweak is that we're literally putting the hour that the update got changed, because at times we were changing the website twice a day. So we're putting that out, and we're actually adding the minute and the second so people can know that we're literally changing the website as quickly as the CDC is changing their standards.
Thank you for all of your work. We are extremely grateful to have people like you leading the city through these very dark times.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
The next item, I know Commissioner Neese wanted to.
I think Dr. Wells wanted to say something.
Oh,
To answer your question, Commissioner, the ICS, the Incident Command Station, has a section there for the community. And that's where this committee we had this morning would fall into it. So I don't know if it's really necessary to have another resolution, because it's already incorporated in our present system and our structure. I know the diagram here was pretty small, and you probably couldn't see it, but it's incorporated there. And that's what we mentioned this morning. That's why we'll continue to incorporate the meetings like we had this morning on a regular basis, and it's part of our ICS.
Great point.
so you're saying you don't think?
You don't need
task
the
force is-
resolution for that task force, whatever, what are you going to call the group that was together? And you're going to expand it, the one from
We
this morning?
just, as we were talking with the mayor yesterday, we just call this part of our community group, as opposed to the city.
Oh, okay,
corporation. Remember
okay.
we was talking about the community?
Right.
And we put all those, the hospitals, the PUB, the DPS, and everybody else is part of that community group, and they are part of this ICS command structure.
Do you
So-
need our
But what about-
permission to activate it, or
No.
you have the ability to activate it on your own? There
It's
you
already
go.
been activated as far as I know.
So you can add those names on there?
Yes.
Now, so we were talking about adding, each of us appointing somebody, but if it's not necessary, then that's fine.
If it's there already, I think we're good.
It's already incorporated.
It's already incorporated in the incident command system, so they will be invited to report to our emergency operations center to be able to have meetings and be able to participate in the EOC.
And I'm going to ask this as well. I'd like a daily update sent to all the commission.
Yes,
The
sir.
way that we get the check-ins from Mr. Bernal, I want a coronavirus update daily to our commission so they can be updated and be able to respond to questions from constituents.
Yes, sir, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work. We're very, very grateful.
Thanks. Okay,
Next, we have consent agenda items. At this time, I would just like to let you all know that all travel has been canceled. So those agenda items will be removed from consent. And letter C also?
Okay, so letter A will be removed then?
And letter C?
C, what about D, Jessica?
I just, Commissioner Munguia and myself placed that item on Friday when all of the coronavirus getting closer and closer to us started happening. We just really wanted to make sure at the time that the city was working with the small businesses, was working with anybody in the city that had questions or was not really following recommendations, CDC guidelines. So I would say that with your declaration, it's pretty much covered. I just wanted to make sure that before it was in place, that we had something ready
Right,
to roll.
and that was again like what Commissioner Galante did, just kind of forward thinking as far as getting this on the agenda, so I appreciate that. Okay, I'll
So
take a
move
motion
to-
then.
Yeah, I'll move to approve the consent agenda minus A, C, and D.
Very good, we have a motion to approve consent agenda without items A, C, or D. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'm gonna vote aye on B, E, and F, and I'm abstaining on G.
Very good.
Oh, wait a minute. There was one of them.
Oh, that's right.
I thought that was the one that we could all vote for.
Yeah.
Yeah, Renee?
I'm sorry? This is a second reading on this
Yeah.
one?
So we're
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 good.
fine to all vote?
Right.
Yes, on
there's-
this one, you can.
Okay.
Was there something with Republic on this? No,
No.
right?
No, it's
Okay,
later.
Okay.
Wait, can I take back my motion and also take G, because then that undoes what I did, voted before. So I'll move to approve the consent agenda minus A, C, D, and G. And then we can take out G separately, so that y'all can vote on it.
You look confused, counsel.
Yes, because then, well, it all depends if we get a second, but if we don't get a second on that,
Well, she needs a second to rescind her motion? Because she already made a motion and it was seconded and it was voted on.
Right, we were voting, you just,
I voted yay on B, E, and F
Right.
and abstained on G.
right, I think that's the most prudent action then. Commissioner Neese, I mean, let's go ahead and take a vote based on the first motion. You're voting,
Well, we already voted.
okay.
if we
But,
get,
so if her motion is to retract her motion,
Yes.
yeah, we haven't have an actual voting on this, so if I may recommend that the motion be modified, Commissioner,
Okay.
to take 8 through F with the cancellations of A, C, and D, and we'll leave G as a
Correct, separate
single,
item.
separate item.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll modify my motion to approve the consent agenda minus A, C, and D, and only through F. G will be taken separately.
Correct.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed?
I'm not opposing, I just was late.
You were what?
I was not opposing, I just said aye a little bit late.
Oh, okay.
Okay, So
All
I
right.
voted aye on that because G is not included, right? So.
Correct.
okay.
Right.
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to approve G.
We have a motion to
Second.
approve item G and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay,
I'm abstaining.
okay.
It carries.
Motion passes. Okay. Public hearings.
Next, we have public hearings. Public hearing number 1, public hearing in action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2019-064-S-MA-CO to grant a major amendment allowing a restaurant medium retail 3C use in dwelling ADA for lots 40 and 41, La Villita Unit Number 4 Subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located at 313 Manzano Street, Brownsville, Texas, 78521, as shown in Exhibit A with a conditional overlay in District 1.
Once again, good evening. So this case might seem familiar. It was approved in a previous city commission meeting on January 7th of this year. The request right now is to grant a major amendment to allow a restaurant in medium retail 3C. Originally, the applicant had come in with a site plan. They had proposed a certain footprint for the building. Now, a couple of weeks after approval, they came back requesting an additional approximate 500 square feet to the structure. So based on the specific use permit ordinance, all major amendments do require that they go through this process to basically approve the expansion to the footprint. So as I was mentioning, originally the application was submitted on November 8th of last year. Then it was presented at P&Z where it was approved and moved forward to City Commission all the way to second reading and approved on January 7th of this year. And then on February 7th, the applicant submitted a revised site plan to increase the building footprint. This is the aerial view of the property. What's predominant in the area are single-family dwellings. There is also some commercial businesses, but outside of the view on this aerial map, the predominant zoning is dwelling. There's also general retail, medium retail, and dwelling retail. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 14 mail-outs and 0 written opposition. This is the street view. And just so to show some perspective, this was the original building. And now they're proposing, let me change the color. This area right here. And this area right here.
So where would they park? Where's the parking?
The parking is all of this gray area. So at the P&Z meeting on March 5th, P&Z did recommend approval. Staff did recommend conditions. Basically, since there were some concerns on the previous or on the original application, some neighbors did show up to the meeting. They had some questions and concerns, and so staff did to prevent any sort of complaints and further welfare. We did tell the applicant that there were going to be some conditions. We had them increase their landscaped area, change the location of the dumpster. Originally, they had it abutting the single-family home adjacent to it. We asked them to put a screening wall to limit the ingress and the egress to the property. They used to have 2 entrances. Now they will only be having 1. Exterior lighting, just to have the downlighting type to avoid emitting light directly to the adjacent residential uses, to limit the sign to a monument sign, and to prevent exterior noises. Since they are proposing an outdoor covered patio, we're just limiting them to not, let's say, be playing loud music, to avoid any of those type of complaints.
This is the restaurant in the residential neighborhood, right?
Right.
Okay. Do you have any more presentation? No? This is a public hearing. Is anybody here on this item? Do I have a motion to close public hearing?
Motion to close?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, do I have a motion on the item?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? I was in opposition the first time. I'm in opposition again, so I'll vote nay on that. Thank you. Motion passes.
Next, we have public hearing number 2, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2020-005 to rezone from dwelling ADA to dwelling JDG for Lot 1, Block 1, Villa del Rey Subdivision, Section 2, Cameron County, Texas, located at 673 Ray Salomon Street, Brownsville, Texas, 78521, as shown in Exhibit A, District 2.
So this property has 0.14 acres. The Property owner is looking to rezone the area district from A to G. The proposed use is a carport. This property is fronting Rey Salomon Street. This is the aerial view of the property. What predominates in the area is single-family dwelling. There is also some undeveloped land. The predominant zoning is dwelling. There is also general retail and medium industrial within the area, as well as light industrial. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 38 mailouts and 0 written opposition. This is a street view. And just to point out, there are other properties that have carports, such as this one, and you really can't see because of the tree, but this one has carports, and some, we count 12 others, as some of them are outside of the frame. So the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. P&Z does recommend the approval to rezone from dwelling A to dwelling G.
Why do they need a permission to build a carport?
Because of the setbacks, G is the only one that allows a carport within the front setback.
Okay.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is anybody here on this item?
Motion to close public hearing?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
I like your new little graphics, that they're very helpful.
Right?
With the street view and
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
Yes, we'll commend Mr. Garrido, who's here in our
Oh, very
audience. He's the
cool.
one who's been improving our graphics.
Much better than before. The black and white copy.
Next, we have public hearing number 3, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-235-2020-902 to rezone from dwelling A, DA, dwelling G, DG, dwelling Z, DC, general retail G, 4CG, light industrial J, 7CJ to general retail G, 4CG for an approximate 60.85 acres comprised of all of reserve area B, Villa del Norte subdivision, all of blocks 7 to 11, Harrington Place subdivision, 1.41 acres out of blocks 1 to 4, Harrington Place subdivision, a 1 acre tract out of Share 12, Espiritu Santo grant, and a 4.5 acre tract out of 19.5 acres out of Block 1 and 2, RA League subdivision, save and accept 1.257 acres out of Reserve Area B, Villa del Norte subdivision, located near Stillman Road, Brownsville, Texas 78526, as shown in Exhibit A, District 3.
This is a city-initiated rezoning from dwelling A, G, Z, and light industrial J to general retail G for a mixed-use development. The property is located on the east side of Expressway 77, north and south of Stillman Road, and consists of 60.85 acres. Surrounding land uses are single-family residences, commercial, and vacant land use. Adjacent zoning is dwelling, commercial, and industrial uses. This is the image of the legal notice we sent out. There was 21 mailouts, and we did not receive any opposition, neither writing nor phone calls. And that's just a bird's eye view of the subject property itself. You'll see the flea markets on the west side of the expressway. This is a feasibility plan that was submitted to staff, showing some of the uses that are proposed, some retail, some office use, and similar commercial uses in the area. This is also a 3-mile radius study that was submitted to staff. The rezoning request is consistent with the future land use plan, and Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the rezoning request.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is anybody here on this item?
Motion to close.
public hearing?
We have a motion to close and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have items for individual consideration. Action item number 4, consideration and action to award a contract to develop a regional 5-year consolidated and strategic plan for the City of Brownsville, City of San Benito, in the city of Harlingen to TDA Consulting, Inc. for the amount of $75,686.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Commissioners. Tonight, we are requesting your consideration and action to award a contract for the development of a regional 5-year consolidated plan. This plan is required by HUD in addition to our annual action plans that are presented before you during the summer, and it's because we receive HUD funding. This is a regional plan with the City of San Benito and the City of Harlingen. Last City Commission, you approved an MOU to work with those two cities. They also received approval through their commission as well. We recommend awarding the contract to TDA. This is the highest ranking firm in the amount of $75,686. The evaluation committee included the City of Harlingen and City of San Benito, and the fee will be covered through grant funding.
Perfect. We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passed. Thank you.
Action item number 5, consideration and action to approve the Restoring Dignity for the Homeless Plan.
Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. You all heard from BC Workshop last week, last meeting about this plan. And so we're bringing it here before you for an adoption. There was supposed to be a meeting today of the coalition to kind of get some comment period, some comments on the plan. That meeting was canceled, obviously. But it is up for your consideration for an adoption of this plan. One of the things that we've been discussing with BC Workshop as kind of another action item or as a next step is to approach Good Neighbor Settlement House, because they are the ones that are closest to downtown, and to talk about doing some sort of like a property master plan or some sort of a site design work for Good Neighbor, to see what it is that would, any additional facilities that would fit on that site, what those facilities would look like, and then more importantly, what those facilities would cost. And so, you know, I happen to think that that's a pretty good a next action item from this. Apart from, we could obviously pick a couple of these items and focus on those in the near future.
Where would the funding come from, that next item or that next step?
For BC?
For Good Neighbor that you just brought up.
So back in 2014, we entered an MOU with BC Workshop for the space that they rent from us. And basically, they provide services throughout the year. And so that would just go into those services. So there is really there's no cost per se.
No, but you're saying that you want to expand the Good Neighbor Settlement House and do a property, redo their property. Where would the funding for that come from?
Well, what I said was that we thought BC thinks it's a good step to do that.
To do the planning.
To do the planning, yeah. And
Right.
so we don't know how much it would cost. We don't know what they
No,
need.
I
We
got
don't
you.
know.
Okay. All right.
So
I got off track.
Yeah.
It was just for planning that next step. But you're giving us a plan here that doesn't have anything to implement it. I mean, if we pass this plan, are they going to start doing the short-term housing? Or are they going to start doing these other community, what are those little things where people can deposit food and different items? Is that what you're?
I think the idea is I think this plan is broken down into short, medium, long-term. Part of that, the housing component is probably the more long-term strategy here. But there are short-term, I think at the last meeting I was here, there was a conversation about the hygiene station trailer.
Yes, that was it. That was one of them. So
Yeah.
we're going to implement that if we pass this plan?
I think it would be good to start looking into those things.
Okay, so can you go forward in your
Yes.
slides?
There you go. Which page are you looking at?
Yeah, well, keep going. I don't know what the page number is.
So we didn't implement hand washing downtown? No?
It's part of the plan, the recommendation of, on the part of the homeless plan is
Okay,
certain
right there,
ways to,
back up, okay,
to
so,
attack hygiene. and that's
short-term
mobile
housing. If we pass this plan tonight, are we gonna initiate that?
I think the idea would be to start looking at those solutions.
Okay.
I think they
You're,
would come.
you're having us pass a plan tonight, right?
Yeah.
This plan.
The plan, I mean, a plan normally just kind of sets the idea, sets the vision, and then you start working on an implementation
Well, no,
strategy.
that's not a plan. A plan is a plan to implement something, like short-term housing that I've been trying to get us to do. So it's in the plan now, so my next question is, when do we implement the short-term housing and use one of those buildings that we own, just like they planned and suggested in this plan that we're about to pass? When do we get to start doing that?
I think we would do it, after the
Doesn't it
planning
depend
of
on the
this.
cost?
Well, also with implementation, bids if necessary.
I think
that
that
It's
The-
kind
the
of like
idea
it's
was
a
brought
ghost
up-
plan. It's a ghost plan. It doesn't really do anything yet.
No, I mean, the idea of reaching out to Good Neighbor is because some services are already being provided there, right? So for example, can additional housing be built on a Good Neighbor property to where they would have access to those services?
Who would have access? I mean, all right,
The
we'll go
homeless.
back over this again. We have people sleeping on the sidewalks all around the Casa del Nylon, by the, across the street from your place, and some other places on Washington. Okay, so they don't want to go to Good Neighbor Settlement House. They could go there and get a van to the Ozanon. Yeah, they all know that. They're not going to do that. So the Supreme Court said, you can make them quit staying on the sidewalks, public camping, if you provide them another place and make them go to it. So you can't get them to the Good Neighbor Settlement House. You can't get them to the Osanom. So we need an alternative, like this plan that they have in here, the short-term plan.
So I think the idea would be to identify where that is, if it is in one of our buildings, or if it's at Good Neighbor or at a different organization. Identify and then go through the cost and what that cost would be, and then build it out and go through the procurement process.
Okay, we already own the buildings, right?
Yes, of course.
We just have to turn on the electricity, fix the bathrooms. How much could that cost?
But you're talking about additional bed space.
I'm looking at short-term housing plan.
No, I understand that, but what kind of beds are we going to want?
We
What
have
kind of-
cots that we already offered. Ozanom has all the cots left over from the migrant crisis that we had. We're offering them free. So we have beds, we have a building, we have a restroom that needs restoration probably, and then we have short-term housing.
My understanding is that we'll after this is adopted, we'll move through that.
After it's adopted, but there's no plan in here. Like I said, it's a ghost plan, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave it. I'm gonna drop this, and I'm not gonna be worried about it anymore, okay? Because we're not getting anywhere with your ghost plan.
Understand?
Do we have any motions or any other discussion? Do we have any motions on this?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I do have a question. Just to kind of get some feedback, the idea of going to Good Neighbor and reaching out and doing a facility, kind of maybe a facilities plan, that's something that the commission likes, wants?
I think the
has-
fact that it's part of BC Workshop Services to the city, I think that's good. Ideally, I believe the rational thing here is going to be not just the design. BC will do the design,
Sure.
but we're going to need to partner with them as far as how it's going to be funded if it goes forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm talking about the build out and all that. That's going to require partnering with them, possibly other entities as far as funding, obtaining that grant funding, et cetera.
Sure.
But I think it's a great idea. It's 2 years at least past due on Good Neighbor at least. So, yeah. I don't see why
I
anybody would
think
be in
BC
opposition to
Workshop
that.
should also visit at least on the phone, well, obviously on the phone these days, with the people at UT Health in Houston. Dr., I can't remember her name, has a specific expertise in this area, and get her input as well.
Okay.
But I would like to see a coordinated effort to figure all this out, when cities tend to focus on one aspect without doing a coordinated effort and all the social programs that go with it, they tend to fail.
But I understand Commissioner Neese's point.
I would mention that the Good Neighbor Settlement House and the Osanon handle the other part of this problem. The chronic part of it is what I just explained. And they have social services, and they're being coordinated now a little bit with BCIC along with the other people that volunteer. So it is being considered all in one. This is just a chronic problem that we need to get our head around.
I understand Commissioner Neese's point as far as the action. The action is the most important part of this. We do need to have some sort of plan so that we can actually start working towards that. But I do agree with Commissioner Neese's. A plan is great, but we need to, the most important part of a plan is the action side.
Sure.
So I'd like to really see where we can move as quickly as possible on what can be moved on as quickly as possible, please. So any further discussion on this? Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
We have one nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have action item number 6, consideration and action to award a term contract for marketing and consulting services to C. Spence Group based in San Francisco, California, for projects involving marketing campaigns for the city of Brownsville as needed over the next 1 year with the option to renew for additional 2 one-year periods.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. Buenas noches. This comes rather at an opportune moment, considering our communications, what we're doing with our community. However, I do feel that this is going to be important after the fact to market and promote our city and its best assets, which is the community and the passion that we have. So this is a marketing and consulting proposal. Let me go next to the presentation.
I would just ask, maybe is it wise to put this on pause until after the coronavirus threat to the whole nation?
Is that a motion?
Why?
Oh, well, I mean, why are we advertising to come here if there's a travel ban?
Okay, so there's 2 separate items, right? Item 6 is to actually select a company. Item 7, if I understand it, is the amount of money for the services. But correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Romero, this contract would be city initiated as far as services. We would ask the service provider to do the work upon our request. Is that right?
That is
So
correct.
if we don't want to move forward, if we don't want to move forward yet, or we may need to monitor this virus situation,
That's not
we
what
can
the
hold back.
contract
Is that
says.
correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's not what the contract says.
Oh,
Plus, okay, so did you want to make that motion?
well, I mean,
I'll second it.
I
if
was
you
just
are.
asking, yeah. Well, I'll follow your lead.
I move we table it.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to table and a second. Any discussion on that? Okay, let's take a vote on the motion to table. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3?
I'll table.
Okay, 4. So items.
I would really like to go very strong with this. I just want to see what's going to happen
Okay.
nationwide the next few weeks, if that makes sense.
Very
When you
good.
bring it back, you have a contract for, it started out 2 years for 260, and now it's 1 year. I'd like to know who made the change. Was it us or them? And you have a second contract. You're asking us to pass 2 contracts. One's for 195,000 and one's for 260. And they do the same thing, both
Commissioner,
contracts.
Commissioner, yeah, do we have to finish the vote then?
Yeah, if I may address this, what happened was, Commissioner, because of the points that you all brought up during the last meeting, I asked them to separate the items so that it was clear that the targeted items was no longer 260, but 195 for, I believe, 3 projects.
3 targeted projects.
And to your point, Commissioner, Neese, from the last meeting, that the periods for the contract really do not carry over any financial amount anymore. It's based on a fee schedule that was provided to you all during the last meeting that we had.
Right.
So it's no longer 260, Commissioner. It got reduced to 195 because of the items that would be presented to you, the commission, and
The summary
renewals-
says 260 for number 6.
I think the new numbers were 195 for 3 items.
That's on 7. On 6, it says 260.
Number 6 should not have any more figures
It
on
has
that.
1 year for 260 on number 6, and it has 195 on number 7 for the same services.
So,
Minus the new space, which I asked y'all to check, to reach out to BCI. Matter of fact, when you-
Commissioner, we're gonna table the item. Do you
Okay,
just
yeah.
wanna go ahead and
Right.
take these up with staff?
I just want to make it
So-
clear that I support this project. I just want
No, absolutely. and-
coronavirus.
and Considering our climate right
Yeah.
now, and we are going to need to promote our city, so
Oh, yeah,
this
So
is
then-
important.
definitely.
The,
You have my support.
the vote to table passed. 4 votes. Is anybody voting nay?
Nay.
Nay? All right.
I
Motion's
think-
tabled.
I think that will make number 7 moot at this stage.
I would agree. So do we need to take action on that?
I'll move to
council?
table that if
Okay.
we need to.
Sure. I think that's
Second.
the best way. Motion to table in a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we have 1 nay.
Is that for number 7?
Yes.
Yes.
May I read it?
So 6 and 7.
Well, I was like,
Read them both.
well, action item number 7, consideration action toward a contract for marketing consulting services for targeted projects involving marketing campaigns for the Brownsville Convention and Visitors Bureau in the city of Brownsville to C-Spence contract number MCS-60-0919 in the amount not to exceed $195,000.
Okay,
So
so we voted to table it already. Thank you.
Yes. Action item number 8, consideration and action to approve ordinance number 2020-1666, authorizing the issuance, sale, and delivery of $6,975,000 in aggregate principal amount of City of Brownsville, Texas combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2020, to be purchased by the Texas Water Development Board, securing the payment thereof by authorizing the levy of an annual ad valorem tax and a pledge of certain surplus revenues of the city's municipal landfill system, and approving and authorizing the execution of a paying agent register agreement, an escrow agreement, a principal forgiveness agreement, and all other instruments and procedures related thereto.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners. I'm going to introduce Mr. Bobby Varela. He's passing out a handout right now. He's a representative with Estrada Hinojosa, is here to cover this item. Also joining us is Mr. Tom Spurgeon with McCall, Parker, and Horton.
Welcome. Sorry we've kept you a little bit, but.
No problem.
Sorry.
It's,
Maybe we can speed it up. It's a 0% loan.
I know.
We didn't make a I moved that we approve it.
Yeah, we
Can
got
we
it.
get a second?
I told Noel, 60-second shot clock and we're gone.
Let's do it.
Do you want to bring up any points? Or just really
Just,
quickly highlights?
again, 0% interest. The project fund, of course, is going to be 6.88 million. And then I guess you're also getting some forgiveness, 25,000. Just to reiterate, if you go to page 3 and you focus on 2 different columns there, the one in yellow and the one in green, these were the scenarios we presented to you back late last year.
Right.
We were anticipating 0.5% rate, which would have been pretty good also, but if you look at the bottom line, that would have been 7.3 million in payments. If you go to the next page, it actually turns into 6.975.
Fantastic.
The project fund, of course. We were refunding some debt last year in the green column, and again, that was, we were anticipating that would cost you $400,000. It actually turned out to save you about 139,000.
Oh, wow.
And again, that front loaded it towards the front, that gave you capacity. And if you look at the far right column, your tax rate of 25 pennies, that was the whole goal, trying to make sure we provided capacity for you and staff to move forward on that middle column, which is the brown one. If you needed to go out for funds in 20, 21, and 22, that allows you capacity not to increase the tax rate. Again, we're here for any questions you have.
Okay.
And again, if we adopt it today, we can close the transaction by April 15th. And with that, I'll leave it with bond counsel, if you have any questions.
I just wanted you to explain it for the benefit of the public who may be listening, that's all. So we did, Commissioner.
I'll make the motion.
I've made a second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
Action
Get some more of
item,
those.
Yeah.
action item number 9, consideration action to adopt budget amendment ordinance number 2020-1665 to amend fiscal year 2020 budget for the general fund, capital projects fund, bridge fund, fleet and facilities fund, and capital outlay pay-go fund.
Honorable Member, City Commissioners, I'll briefly go over the proposed budget amendment. It covers special projects and maintenance and operation costs. Just to summarize it, the unassigned fund balance at the end of fiscal year 2019 is going to increase about $1.8 million, which is positive. This proposed budget amendment will have a decrease on the fund balance to about $606,000, leaving an unassigned fund balance of about $24.2 million. This is equivalent to 22.5% of our expenditures or 82 days of expenditures available. First item talk about is redistricting, $36,000. These are legal services once every 10 years, so we needed. This item got approved on December 2019. Second item under maintenance and operation, approval of the police contract, $317,000 to cover the cost through the end of the year. Communication and marketing budget, $223,000. This will cover the operation cost through the end of September 30th. Tennis center, $30,000. Initially, this was part of the budget process. During the budget process, it was considered maybe an opportunity for Parks and Recreation to take over the operations, but evaluating it wasn't feasible. It would cost us more, so proposed to continue outsourcing this to the Tennis Association to run it. On the reallocation of funds, and this has not hit our fund balance. Basically, we have a subdivision park fee. We're using the park subdivision park fee in order to do the local match on a grant that's by the Texas Parks and Wildlife, and this is for the local match on the Brownsville Senior Center for $277,000. And lastly, during the budget process, we had allocated $1 million from the bridge fund to cover some capital outlay in the amount of $400,000 and $600,000 for our fleet. As for the capital outlay, there was a project dealt with the parks field improvements that went over budget by about $88,000 because we recognized a savings because of the timing of the fleet coming in. We're requesting that we reallocate some of the funds that were dedicated for the fleet, which we do have sufficient funds in order to complete the funding requirements for the capital outlay fund or the field improvement fund in the amount of $88,000. And that concludes the presentation. You have any questions?
Any questions?
Is it a motion to acknowledge?
Second.
To approve.
Oh, to approve, motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have action item number 10, consideration action to approve resolution number 2020-025 in support of the Samano Downtown Brownsville Historic Preservation and Urban Revitalization Project.
Mayor and Commission, this is a great opportunity to issue a resolution of support in favor of the Samano project. And Nick with CDBC here is to give you a little bit more background on their application for tax credits through the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. This is not like the other 9% tax credit proposals that we brought you. This is a separate funding category for the project.
Thank you. Good morning or evening, what are we? So the presentation in front of you, CDCB, Come Dream, Come Build, is requesting support of a resolution to do a massive redevelopment of what we're referring to as the Samana building or the old State National Bank building on the corner of 12th and Elizabeth Street, home to Payless Shoe Source and lots of other things before that. It was built in 1925. Currently, CDCB has raised $2.3 million from private foundation to help to purchase the building, plus do some rehab and redevelopment of the building. We currently need to go to the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs for a $2 million grant or a deferred forgivable loan, which would get us to about $4.5 million of the $7 million it'll cost to do the project. If you look at the back page of the report or the presentation I gave you, I just kind of skipped through that presentation. You've all seen it a million times and you know who we are. Thank you. That's okay. But the idea for this project came at a couple of things. One, this will be a permanent supportive housing project. It will be made of 39 efficiency apartments and one-bedroom apartment for living on-site staff in floors 2 through 5. It's a 5-story building. And then the bottom story is, the idea is to open up a small bodega grocery store in the downtown area that we don't have now after the wonderful HEB left the community. So that is the idea for the project. Again, it will cost somewhere around $7 million to do this. It will be a permanent supportive housing, which means that we are attempting to do this with no debt, which allows us to charge very low rents to folks living there, which may also help with some of the homeless problem as well downtown, as well as the idea, CDCB's new mission to affect people's life and build wealth also has to do with offering healthy foods in an area which is now considered a food desert. Food desert is where there's no healthy foods within 1 mile. So there is none within 1 mile. The closest is 1.8 miles away to the closest grocery store, as well as affordable housing to some of the lowest income residents in the community, as well as on the other hand, bringing more people to live downtown. No matter who they are, more people downtown is better for downtown. So the idea of the grocery store is to actually have a place where people can eat and buying food and kind of merge bringing more people downtown with living and food as close to them. So that's the idea. We want to live up to our promise probably a year ago or 2 years ago when we wanted 200 acres to develop on the outskirts of town to also be focusing downtown. So I think I'm living up to my promise. So if I can get your approval of this resolution, it allows us just to go forward and ask for the money. I'm not here to promise anything, but I pretty much have delivered when I ask, so I'm trying again.
Yeah, you have a little bit of credibility.
Little bit of
Just a little
credibility. I
bit.
have just a little
Motion
bit.
to approve?
Second.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
I just want,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I would just want to say I have really fond memories of that building because my dentist was in there when I was a little girl.
You know, you are probably the 100th person I've heard tell me a story about being in that building.
Must have been a good dentist if you
yeah.
had fond memories
He was
before
funny.
Happy Gas.
He was nice. He didn't frighten me, so.
We currently have an LOI, a binding LOI to purchase the property. We will sign the contract before the end of March and then go into a 3 to 9 month escrow period depending on the environmental studies that I need to do.
Okay.
If I don't have to do a huge amount of them, then it'll be 3. And if it have to go more, it'll be about 9.
Okay.
So the zoning F issue will be resolved by the time they're ready to, okay.
That's the other reason I'm waiting to buy the building.
When's the last time it was occupied on the upper floors?
The upper floors, the current owner had the, and floor 2 had the diner there, probably, I believe he told me it was in the mid-'80s. Payless was there, just up until they went bankrupt. But then you get above that, it's been a long time. But it is like walking into kind of a time warp going up there. It's really cool. So if anyone want to see it before we tear it on down, I've actually had a photographer go through and take pictures of the way it is now.
That's awesome.
And it's very, very cool looking, and we're excited about this prospect.
It is cool inside. I remember the stairs.
Yeah, they're marble. The first 2 floors,
Yes.
they're marble stairs.
I remember that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, fancy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bless you.
Vote?
We had a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much,
Thank
Nick.
you.
Great
Good
job.
luck.
Thank you.
Next, we have board appointments. Consideration action to appoint members to the LGBTQ task force.
I'll move to appoint Albert Hinojosa.
Hold on.
Oh,
We have a list here in front of us that has only 3 applicants. I had seen something earlier or late last week that had a lot more than this.
Yeah, that's the second list.
Oh,
Here,
okay.
you want to see
Yes. We did receive about 18 applications.
It's in the packet. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
it's in the packet.
Do you know if, there's only 3 on here, do you know if Nolan Navarro is on the list?
No.
No.
Here's the
I don't
list.
think they have to be on the list, though. It's a task force, no?
Right, but we did go through some measures to have the application done, et cetera, but I agree, I don't think we need necessarily for them to be on the applicant list. If y'all have certain people you want to appoint, I think that would work.
Well, he did
Council?
apply.
Renee,
Council,
does
are we,
this,
Council, are
Yes.
we good with that? Do we have to stick to the applicants, or can we go ahead, because it's a task force?
It is a task force, so
Okay.
it doesn't go under the same manual that the other boards and eligibility manual goes through, so. you
He
all
did
have that
apply,
for
but
you.
it was late today, so I'm gonna move to a point. Can I move yet? Yes?
I have one more question.
Oh, go ahead.
Does this one mean that if they serve, one of those, that it can't serve on other boards? Or is this one exempt from that?
Well, I believe if we apply the same reasoning, people would still be able to serve on other boards,
Okay.
because this is a task force. And I
Right.
know I've received certain questions about eligibility for task force. And bottom line, there are no rules in regards to that, so you all can move freely in this regard.
Okay, so
Just so you
Commissioner,
all-
go ahead.
Just so you all know, we did get about 4 applications that don't live in the city of Brownsville. They're from other cities that also applied for the task force.
Those are the ones on the bottom, Harlingen,
Yes.
Cameron Park,
Yes,
Portisville.
Portisville.
Cameron Park's not considered Brownsville?
It's not
City
inside the
limits?
city limits.
Right, but their address is in Brownsville?
Well, they're in Brownsville, but it's outside the city limits.
Okay. All right, so Commissioner Tetro made a motion to appoint Albert Hinojosa. Do I have a second on that?
I'll move to, yeah.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
I'd like to motion to appoint Bernice Cruz Marquez.
Second?
We have a motion to appoint Bernice Cruz Marquez in a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. I'd make a motion to approve Jose Colon Novaez.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
I'm going to move for Nolan Navarro.
Second?
We have a motion to appoint Nolan Navarro in a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
I move to appoint Brian Martinez.
Second?
We have a motion to appoint Brian Martinez in a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
And I'll move to appoint Norma Rodriguez, city employee.
We have a,
Second?
Norma, what? Rodriguez? We have a motion to appoint Norma Rodriguez in a second.
I second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. All
How
right, that's it.
exciting.
Yes.
And Commissioner Munguia
Still has one here.
can nominate somebody.
I think
With-
this is the first task force south of Austin.
Wow, that's great.
Austin, yeah.
They've already done a great job, so, the initial appointees.
I hope
I'm
more
sure we'll
cities
carry that.
follow.
So,
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I know y'all are watching. Thank you for the work you've done so far, and look forward to everything you're going to do. Thanks.
Next agenda item is executive session. We have executive session A, discussion and deliberation of personnel matters pursuant to section 551.0741 of the Texas Government Code related to the employment and duties of the city auditor. Executive session B, attorney consultation pursuant to section 551.0712 Texas Government Code to receive legal advice in connection with the city's rights, duties, privileges, and obligation under the Residential Solid Waste Services Agreement with Republic Services and related legal matters. Executive session C, consultation with attorney to receive confidential legal advice pursuant to section 551.0712 of the Texas Government Code on a matter related to the modification of city processes related to closed meetings under sections 551.103 and section 551.104 of the Texas Government Code, in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with this chapter. Executive session D, attorney consultation pursuant to section 551.0712 Texas Government Code to receive legal advice in connection with the city's rights, duties, privileges, and obligation arising out prior city commission action related to the Riverfront project and related legal matters. Executive session E, attorney consultation pursuant to section 551.0711 Texas Government Code relating to pending litigation styled and numbered in regarding the Brownsville Firefighters Association versus the City of Brownsville, BFFA grievance number 2019-03 regarding retiree health care benefits and related legal matters. Executive session F, consultation with attorney pursuant to section 551.071A of the Texas Government Code on a matter related to the pending litigation in case style New Singular PCS LLC versus the City of Brownsville, civil action number 119-CV 00091 from the Southern District of Texas, Brownsville Division.
Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
City Secretary, please note that I will not be participating in item B. I believe it has something to do with Republic Services, and I have a conflict of interest affidavit on file, and I will not be participating in executive session or voting.
Okay. Do I have a motion
Do I have
to?
to do anything else?
You already have an affidavit.
Yes, I do.
And I have a conflict, a personal conflict with letter F, so I won't be participating in that discussion nor the decision.
And affidavits on file on that as well.
Thank you. Thanks. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion to go into executive session.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
We're in executive session.
Actually eat something tonight, man.
I got the sleepies.
You mean you're tired?
I'm super tired.
Isn't that one of the symptoms? Loss of energy?
Do you have a fever?
No, it's my bedtime.
We're in quarantine in the back room.
I'm like Noelle, I go to sleep early.
We're back from executive session.
It is now 8:58. Possible action on any items as discussed in executive session. Action, executive session A, discussion and appropriate action regarding the appointment of a city auditor for the city of Brownsville, Texas.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the commission. It's been a long day, and we've had a couple of meetings on this item. I really have no more information to present to you all. I believe you all met one of the finalists today, and it's an action item if you would like to take an action on the item. You could always choose to give instruction to the Audit and Oversight Committee to continue the search, or if you believe that the search has yielded something worth approving tonight, you can also take that action tonight.
So a motion to approve or to hire pending the terms of the employment agreement?
If you all choose to hire the participant here today, what you could choose is to approve, subject to a contract, or in terms of contract being negotiated by the HR department and/or the city attorney's office at your choice.
You gonna move?
Sure. I'll move to approve pending the contract negotiation with HR.
Second?
We have a motion to approve in a
I'll
second.
third.
Any further discussion? Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
Good job.
Yeah, good job. Thanks.
Action, executive B, consideration appropriate action, if any, to either renew the existing agreement with Republic Services for residential solid waste services as per contract number RSW-16-0210, or to approve a month-to-month continuation of the agreement as per section 4.
My understanding, there will be no action on
There
this
will be
item.
no action on that.
And no
No
vote,
Do I
correct?
still have to abstain from anything?
No, because
Okay.
you won't vote.
I'll sit back down.
Okay.
Action, executive C, consideration action to adopt a new closed session procedures as allowed by City Charter Article 5, Sections 10 and 12, to allow for the recording and preservation of recordings of closed sessions as required by Section 551.103 and Sections 551.104 of the Texas Government Code.
I'll move to approve the new procedure.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the new procedures. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Action, executive D, consideration and action authorizing the city manager to issue instructions to the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation, known as JBIC, and the Brownsville Community Improvement Corporation, known as BCIC, to adopt new closed session procedures to allow for the recording and preservation of recordings of closed sessions as required by Section 551.103 and Sections 551.104 of the Texas Government Code, and allowing the city manager to take any reasonable steps to assure compliance with directives issued.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
Action Executive F, consideration and action to approve the settlement agreement in case style New Singular PCS LLC versus the City of Brownsville Civil Action Number 1-19CV-00091, Southern District of Texas, Brownsville Division, and authorizing the city manager to execute all settlement-related documents.
The request is to approve the settlement agreement.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? We have one abstention. Motion passes. Thank you.
I'll move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Stand adjourned.